Can you help me out on that one while I fix a few things?
So the upcoming events?
Upcoming events.
Yep. Start from scratch.
So,
Start from the end.
tell everything
No,
backwards.
no. Don't do an amber. Don't do an amber.
Yeah, let's do an amber.
Everyone be
So
easy.
one of the events that is just been announced is Cicadia, which is a New South Wales or Sydney-based role-playing narrative LARP game. They have announced their next weekend event, which is Queen's Birthday weekend in July, is it June?
I think it was the 7th of June.
Yeah.
7th of June, yeah.
June. So there's a few groups of Melbourne players and some other interstate players heading up, but it's also a good game to check out. There is in Melbourne there is a LARP group called Chimera Productions who are having a day game later this month on the 25th, part of their Dantier Fantasy World, which have linear, semi-linear based games. So as you go along, you'll be both a player and an NPC, I believe, over the course of the day. So you get a chance to have a bit of fun with a different style of gaming.
Yeah, so I was both an elven wizard and an orc. I just ran around screaming for the latter. It was hilarious.
And the Blood and Gold, the replacement to Swordcraft Quest, has also opened up tickets. So they are available for the April game. And after the fall, a post-apocalyptic game should be having some announcements shortly about our next game as well.
Larpy goodness!
Who's in charge of After the Fall?
Nobody.
It's just a
Now
mess.
there are no winds of fate. Actually, we have a magic 8-ball in the GM headquarters.
Nice.
That's a good idea.
Should the players live?
You should play.
The outlook looks bad.
You should be like playing spin the bottle about who leads the event this time around. Me again?
God damn.
One other thing, because we're doing all of the streaming, both LARP talks and the D&D game, we have become, I think the word is an affiliate for Twitch TV, which means we can do subscriptions and bitches and all that type of stuff.
Have you
Oh,
actually...
did you notice the bitches? I was like,
Yes.
ooh, new feature.
What? Bitchy.
Bitchier.
Oh, bitchy. Yeah, I heard bitches and things like that. Does it already?
No.
The only bitch that I know of that's here. I wasn't going to say anyone. I was just going to leave that wide open.
I wasn't going to say anyone, but you looked at me.
Yes, I did.
I'd be like, yeah.
It's okay, Tim. I know it's a syphilis talk.
Yeah. All right. Basically, what the subscriptions and cheer bits that means that it's a way to help us get some money into this particular thing to actually get audio equipment that works.
We'll take care of it next week, fingers crossed.
So you could buy bit cheers from in Twitch, and then you just basically cheer inside the channel. I'm not quite sure how it works 100% at this stage. You can also actually add a subscription to the channel itself, which is kind of like $5 a month at a minimum. And it's just money that helps us go towards getting this thing up and running and getting us equipment that works. Because I think I know what the problem with the audio is, and it might have to be replacing a big thing here.
So what we've done here to get this
But Tim,
operation
what would
going...
we do without you?
It's not an ID10T error. But one of the things we have been doing to try and get this set up is borrowing gear, using what we have available to us, because we do not have a professional recording set up here.
What are you doing?
What the hell?
I put it on fucking...
What are you on your phone for? God damn it, people on your phones!
Hey, that's Dark Souls!
People on your phones! Ash!
I'm
Ash.
actually getting
Ash.
to push things out.
I don't have any bits to actually bitch you, so I can't do
that's true,
anything.
yeah. You can't bitch you without actually getting bits. Which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
spend money to
I
get
need to
bits.
figure out how to get bits.
You should have
There's a couple of
get
different
bits
ways.
right up on the Twitch TV thing.
The regular Tier 1 subscription is $9.99 a month.
You need to
Oh,
give
so
us
no,
the
no, no,
bits.
no. You can actually get a free subscription for like a month or something like that by also signing up to...
You can start your free trial if you go to the bottom right of the actual channel.
Yep.
The stream. It says subscribe. You can start a free trial or subscribe for $5 a month.
All right. I think we've piss-farted around enough.
Good lord, thank God we weren't actually doing anything important tonight. You know.
Yeah.
Alright,
Like
so-
we don't have to deal with any more fucking
I know.
lightning
Shut up.
Cleric pricks. Or no more dream, bitch.
Hey, Gonk72, I love your stuff. Thank you for subscribing, my friend.
Gonk!
Gonk72.
We are gold.
I was laughing. So the subscription is $5 a month.
It is fun.
Yeah, it is $5 a month.
What's 72? It's just a random number.
No, it's his lucky number.
Actually, that's probably a good way. I should get all you guys to subscribe for the thing, for the money that you give me for all the food. This is like, that works for me.
I do not use Twitch that much.
Best on buyers.
Alright, let's
Anyway, back on track.
let's play ourselves into it.
Organize this.
Bits. Buy stuff. Virtual economies.
Virtual economies!
We are cats.
Oh,
Yeah.
look, you
And
can buy
monkeys.
11,500 bits for $209.
Where'd
you find that? Huh?
So,
You could attend this one.
Allegedly, there's a D&D game going on in the far distance.
Okay, I thought you were gonna. Never
Yeah.
mind. I'm just.
Tonight we're basically doing for our D&D game. We do normally run a D&D game on Sundown Nuts, but we know that a lot of people struggle to get into it and understand what's going on, and our audio in the last ones haven't been the greatest to get into it. So we decided tonight, if people don't talk over me, is to actually go through everything that we've done as much as we can without going overboard, to get people understanding of why next week we're going to Eris and the motivations behind going to that part of the world and dealing with the scourge of Musalon.
Not the scourge.
The scourge of
Well, I
Musalon.
mean,
This is what you'll look like after you deal with the scourge of battle.
Heading backwards.
I thought it was just he didn't want to let go. He's like, yeah.
So the very first game that we ran,
Mary.
the very first game
Did we
we ran,
start in a tavern?
we did start
We
at
did
a
start
tavern.
Tavern.
What was the name of that tavern?
The tavern was named the Salty Dragon Tavern.
He said the name! Guys, he said the name!
Now we all have to drink.
Oh, get out the vodka.
Damn it! I could have brought some.
So yes, I have, when I run my D&D games, I always like to get the party together in a tavern, your typical tavern, and get them to know each other. It's a very, very big cliche, but I love it. I think it works.
grab your hands.
In this particular instance, they all jumped into a tavern. This tavern is located in Carpathia, in the county of Wormia, specifically in the docks of Wormia, or Wormia, I have actually no idea how to pronounce it. And from there, they basically started going on and trying to get to know each other. Which they learnt of my antics of playing a tavern keeper and his wife. Mary! Mary!
With the infinite bosom.
With the infinite bosom.
The bosom of holding.
Bosom of holding.
The thing about my party is that they don't really pay much attention to the actual NPCs themselves because they have no idea of the name of these people other than Mary.
I was about to say, what's the name of the tavern keeper?
Exactly, you don't know, do you?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows the name of the tavern keeper. I know the name of the tavern keeper.
Did he introduce himself?
No, did you ask?
We did not. We don't ever ask
Guy
anyone's
spat in
name.
my beer. That close to being shanked. Hey, don't worry, I threw a dagger at him anyway.
His name is
And
that guy. What yells
Who was
now?
that?
So, while they were in the tavern,
He killed the cook.
while they were getting to know each other, having knife throwing competitions into essentially a dartboard or a bit of wood.
That ended miserably, didn't it?
It did.
Do you remember what was on number 23 on the dartboard?
There was a face.
Yeah.
I don't remember whose face.
I do remember who
I remember whose face it was too.
I wasn't there, but I
He
heard
wears
that and I remember.
red and gold.
I mean, you were there.
I
but no,
wasn't
you
there for the
apparently.
first session.
No, you
I
weren't.
wasn't there for the first session.
Yeah, you were elsewhere, yeah.
Yeah, no, he wasn't.
Ah.
I found the emotes that are.
Yeah, that's it.
It was
Salty dragon.
Love it. Love it.
Sultan.
Take
So,
the salts and a drink.
As a party, we're getting to know each other through their various shenanigans. Rayleigh was approached by a gentleman trying to sell him a large sapphire.
No, before that, his rat found other rats.
Yes.
No, that was after the sapphire was bought.
No, I'm pretty sure it was before as well. They were just running off.
Yeah, I think there might have been like other rats around that sort of like maybe they didn't like become.
Anyway, in the
Influential.
tavern there was these rats, and there was also this big sapphire that was being sold.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and there was a rat dude.
Rat dude. You guys are hopeless. Why did I ever think this was a good idea?
I don't know.
So yes, this particular gentleman came up to try and sell Rayleigh a sapphire.
I'm a barbarian.
And it was quite a large sapphire, and your assessment of it was worth roughly 500 gold pieces. And he was selling it for 10. You decided to buy it.
Because that doesn't have massive warning bells.
Or plot device.
Plus device. And in doing so, you had it. You decided at some point in time, I don't know the specifics why, to give it to the tavern keep.
To make up for stabbing her husband.
In the night. That's right, because you guys are doing the knife throwing competition. You rolled the one, it flicked out of your hand in reverse.
And
It got the tavern keep. He's going, what the fuck? And then yes, you've decided to give the sapphire over to the tavern keep to make up for the fact that you accidentally threw a knife at him. That's right.
Did it like slice his ear or something?
I can't.
I think it hit him like in the shoulder or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I remember, yeah.
Classic.
And in doing so, you gave him this sapphire as recompense. So he decided to give it to his wife Mary, who just, of course, put it down her bosom,
As you do.
as you do.
Well, of course.
And so that's where the thing came about, her bosom being the bosom of.
I don't think it was that. It was the fact that she kept pulling things
Everything.
out of her bosom.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Here's the change.
Here's a tankard.
Here's a dwarf we had earlier.
What are you doing in there?
Still circling at the top.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Like, stupid, what are you doing in there?
I enjoy her bosom just as much as any other person.
So with the sapphire being sold and handed over to the tavern keep, the gentleman who sold it to him wandered outside of the tavern. The rest of the party started to notice as they were doing their drinking rounds that the place was starting to get a bit overwhelmed. Not overwhelmed, probably a lot more than expected. Sorry?
That's just infested.
Infested.
And there were some highwaymen in the corner doing nothing.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is a lie. We
I
didn't see
was
highwaymen
drinking.
until we went to the next town.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, there was highwaymen.
Oh
yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
before we get any further, do we want to like give a brief description of the characters? Because those who have only just joined in probably don't know anything.
Why do you complicate things?
No, why do you complicate these things?
Yeah.
Alright, sorry, never mind, ignore me, never mind. Yep.
Short, violent, peaceful,
Violence.
tortured, emo, quiet, and flamey. Done.
I mean, like,
He's not flaming, he is.
All the
I mean, I've built a lot more things than he has.
No, he's flighty and he's flaming.
yeah, I like that better. I think that works.
Actually, what I'll do is...
I was going to say disintegrating.
We're like the other 7 dwarves, the off-brand ones.
Yeah, there are a few people in the stream who don't.
That's a very good point. What,
Yeah.
what I'll do is I'll actually introduce the characters as I'm talking to them about it. So Rayleigh, who is the human rogue of the group.
Paranoid.
Paranoid human rogue of the group.
Oh, we got unplugged?
The Twitch machine got unplugged.
I'm
Try
fine.
again.
I'm still on fine. I just reset you out.
No, this one's still
Mike.
working, so...
Okay.
Yeah, it's just probably
Just
my connection.
I was going to say, yeah, everything else is working.
So the gentleman came outside and the place was starting to look like it's being infested by rats. Something happened to trigger a fight. I can't remember what it was specifically.
Riley tried to talk to them.
Oh, that's right, yes.
The rat thing around the corner.
The red man!
No,
Hey, you charged around the corner, everyone else charged the
Yeah,
door.
yeah,
You ran back going, there's rats!
And then we set a
What was
fire!
happening? What was happening?
Oh
is-
yeah, you tried to burn the place down.
There was more and more rats in the place, and this guy was peeking around the corner of the door and then giggling and then closing it. And then he was peeking around and giggling, and more rats would come in, and he'd laugh and then close the door again. So he was doing that, so I ran up, and next time he went to open the door, I kicked it, trying to slam it on his head. But he then bailed, ran around the corner, so I chased him, and that's when I ended up outside.
There you go, there you go. That's better, right?
But do you remember a flaming chair?
Then yes, you did. You said
And
that.
then I realised, oh shit, I'm surrounded by rats, so I threw a flaming chair in the doorway.
They had a fight. There was a fight.
There was a firefight.
I killed a man. Not the right one.
Did you kill the cook?
Yes.
Yeah.
He got better.
There you go, Ben. In the D&D system, one of the house rules that we use for 5th edition is that if we roll a 1, I, in the background, without them knowing, roll another D20. And the value of what I get on that D20 dictates what happens on that 1. I also do it on the 20 sometimes, depending on what's going on. I do it for a bit of flavour, do it for a bit of fluff. So in this particular case, he decided to use a touch attack, critical, was it? Cause like wounds, that's right. Or cause wounds.
Inflict wounds.
Inflict wounds.
Wounds, yeah.
Of which he rolled a 1 for.
But I
And-
rolled maximum damage.
He rolled maximum damage and rolled a 1 and was basically right next to the cook and rolled badly and he killed the cook almost. Luckily, next round he got in and healed it back up again, so the cook was able to basically stay alive. But he was like hugely shocked and freaked out by what the hell just happened.
And that was my first yo-yo.
That was your first yo-yo, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that while he was doing that to the cook, I killed 3 giant rats in that room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was very ineffective.
Mm.
Do you want to do introductions?
Oh yes, Imperius, the
Asimir.
the Asimir,
That was
the
before it was the
sorcerer.
Scourge of Aris.
Yeah.
That was before it was the Scourge of Aris.
He was just a bookworm who kept to himself
Mm.
and killed
Who
children,
liked
apparently.
stars?
And yes, of course, Amber, the dwarven berserker, who just basically went to town on a few of the rats that were in the
And-
came in through the back door.
That's before she became a shield. Table.
Yeah, before she-
Yeah.
yeah.
She's only become a table recently.
I believe Yorlin was the one who went into combat with the
The
man
rat
who had
man?
stolen
Yes.
the thingo, only to find out halfway through the fight that he was taking a lot more damage than you were expecting. And he had those telltale signs of, the twitchy nose and all that type of stuff, which you
Yeah.
kind of put two and
He
two
wasn't,
together.
he wasn't taking enough damage, and he was dealing so much.
Mm.
I almost died. It was fun.
Welcome to first level characters.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Eventually they.
No, you made it to second level.
I did.
Just. And viewers at home, we'll get to the reason for that.
I think it's funny because I was the one that did the stupid and you ended up dying.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, did you do the
He did
stupid?
plenty of stupid
Yeah.
things.
It was all
I don't know, I know I did
Wait,
stupid.
wait.
You were trying to stab a right through a door, not
Let's
doorways.
get to that later. Let's get to that later.
Okay, chronological here, don't do an amber.
Alright, so after they've had that fight, we won't go too much into details of that one. They've killed off the rats and they've killed off. They killed the rats and they killed the guy, but
After
the rats
chasing him onto the roof.
after chasing him onto the roof and all type of stuff, and the rats were still coming. They noticed that more of them were starting to come. Rayleigh had figured out that the rats were attached to the sapphire, so he's gone back into the tavern, asked for the sapphire back from Mary. Mary had a bit of time trying to get it back out of her bosom with all the other stuff that was in there. He got the gem and he tried to smash the gem. Failing miserably for the first 2 times he tried. And then more rats were coming in, they were attacking the party, and they were pretty hurt by this stage, so it was looking pretty grim. 3rd time he finally did a half decent roll, managed to actually shatter the actual sapphire itself. Making him realise that it probably wasn't quite a sapphire, but it just looked like it. That was the end of that. That was the end of that session, if I'm not mistaken. After that, they decided for the next session was to find out what they could from this guy, because he didn't die. So they questioned him.
And
It's a polite way of saying it.
Polite way of saying it, yes.
I do believe Mage Hand was used defensively.
Yes, Mage Hand might have been used defensively.
Oh yes, that happened a lot during
By
that session.
me.
Both of us.
And who was
Now, was this when your character got introduced?
This is when my first character got in.
You're human, right?
Yes, at that stage he appeared perfectly human and
That's right.
ordinary.
He was. You were playing a tiefling sorcerer. I'm not going to say the character name.
Can anyone apart from you remember the character name?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
I just know him as Bag of Tiefling Ash.
Would you like me to say?
Oh, we'll call him Butter.
No.
I know him as Mage Hand!
say it for the record.
You're on Storm's End.
Nope, didn't know it. Not even slightly.
Yes.
What's the current character's name?
Also known as Bag of Ash.
Rowan.
Oh, that's right.
No,
So
I
it
remember
started
Rowan.
after
He's my
they-
best friend.
After they'd questioned the rat, they found out that the crown that he actually had, which had the gem inlaid in it, he separated the two and was using the crown himself still, but decided to try and sell off the gem. With that information and the questioning, they found that he located a crypt or something along the lines of just north of Warmia and decided that's where they'll go next. They decided not to question him any further because they missed out on where his lair was. So, they missed out on other stuff.
Wasn't it the crypt was some precursor race of people?
Yes.
Yeah. Like pre-Sigmarite.
Pre-Sigmarite race of people, yes.
I just remember I like stone.
So they decided to travel north.
rock. Drink beer. Rock.
They travelled north into kind of like a badlands of Warmia, where the location of this crypt was, where he'd originally found the crown. On the way travelling there, that's when they started seeing some of the locals come by. I believe you would have seen the Order, an army of the Order coming through, and you had a bit of a questioning with them, but they were heading up to the the Shrine of the Hammer. So as this has always been part of the LARP that we play, which is Swordcraft, in the old Althean world, so we always have that stuff in the background. So in this particular case, Ordermen were travelling to the Temple of the Hammer. After they've gone past the river and then started travelling east to get to the crypt, they met a few other people on their way. I wonder if they still remember them or not, I don't know.
Travelers?
Yes,
Merchants?
travellers.
I remember the travellers, and there was one guy on his own as well. It was
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, who you kept thinking was going to stab us in the night.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I was
didn't
about
he
to
stay
say,
with us for that first
He did
night?
stay with you for one of the nights that he came into your area, yes.
I can't remember his name.
I don't think we ever.
That's right, neither can I.
I don't think we ever asked it, to be honest.
That's true.
We're not good at asking
We're
names.
not very social
We
people.
we had to hide the tiefling from the patrol of.
The
soldiers
Ordermen, that's right, yes. The
Who were
Ordermen.
escorting slaves or prisoners of war?
They were
Yes.
escorting prisoners of war, yes.
I had been relying on a disguise self spell to blend in when in town, but
So 1 hour per day, he can blend in.
yes, it had run out by the time we'd left, so it was just like hood up, hiding behind everybody else.
Except me, because I'm like half the height.
Yeah,
Yes,
he-
you.
Well, me-
Basically,
Because
just
I'm-
hide behind me because I'm the tallest and I'm in
Who am I?
Yes, who are you?
I'm Antoine, the Halfling Paladin.
Oh.
I'm the only one with an accent in this group. It's very disappointing.
No, you're not.
What's your
Amy
accent?
has an accent.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I just
Sometimes.
can't do
I
Yeah,
have a
can't-
slight change.
You can't do the
Thank you very
Scottish
much.
accent.
No, I can't. It's terrible.
And I'm very enthusiastic.
That is an understatement.
Yes, let's say.
I'm loud.
But cleaning up all the names after you is really a pain in the ass.
So they eventually find the crypt after doing a little bit of tracking and stuff like that, because they didn't quite have the exact directions they needed to go for this crypt.
And near TPK from wolves.
That's right. And
No, hyenas.
hyenas. Like D&D is one of those really awesome things
Well, I
and
mean,
stupid things at the same time. Is the dice rolls just didn't go in their favour. Hyenas came up and just basically just took out 2 party members before the combat even started.
And why did it get to us? Because a certain person was on watch with no perception at all.
And hey, he set up a bell and string trap and it didn't go off either. Like,
Yeah, they came from the wrong direction.
well, I mean,
Hey, look, I even sat there looking at the stars rather than actually doing my
I
work. Nothing
assumed having a
happened.
great big dirty barbarian dwarf would be enough to shield the front of us. The back of us has got the alarm.
I mean, yeah, I didn't see them. I don't know. I was too busy admiring my axe. All right, probably getting drunk,
What is it? Sitting in the front.
trying to get drunk.
I can't remember if I made you guys level 2 after this. I think I
I think
did.
it was afterwards.
I think it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was after that fight.
We were so squishy.
Like, so there's a part that we kind of forgot too for this, which was somewhat important, was the makeshift tavern in the junction.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I
So
was
if
gonna
you're
mention
if you see the map that has been put up on the Soulcraft page, the website itself, which probably no one really goes to anymore, there is actually a map of Warmia that we're actually utilising. So you see in the port of Warmia when you head north along the road, it then goes into a T section where if it goes east, you go to Gdansk, and then if you go west, it travels up a bit and then to a bridge and then further up. So at that intersection is when they had like a tent. It's kind of like a tent village where a lot of people stop and travellers and merchants.
There was a whole lot
gather.
of coterie members there as well.
There's also a whole lot of coterie members there as well.
Mostly
Yes.
wounded.
Yes, a lot of the coterie had been suffering a lot because at that particular moment of time, the highwaymen decided to take over the capital of the coterie. And so yes, there's a lot of
It was a strategically important
Backstab.
decision.
yes.
Strategically important.
A lot of the soldiers had been pushed away from their. A lot of the soldiers have been pushed away from their army, displaced. That's the word I'm looking for. Displaced from their army because of the fighting that's been happening. So a lot of them were just trying to make their way back to Gdansk, being the secondary point of getting back together again and seeing what they could do. All right. So anyway, so they got to the crypt. They're all level 2 by now, and they go down into the crypt.
We found it by following little rocks in the sand.
That's right, you did.
Remember that?
The crypts they went through, I had this nice little map going, and then they found a few things and destroyed them. Quite convincingly.
Yeah.
Every once in a while,
That's
though,
what we do.
every once in a while, when they were fighting them, this little ghostly figure would pop up,
Oh yeah.
and they didn't know what to make of it.
Bless you.
But as soon as they finished their combat with whatever they were fighting, the ghostly figure would disappear.
Dressed in the ancient styled clothing.
Yes.
I stood inside him.
We also did a bit of looting, I believe.
Yep, we did a bit of looting.
You mean grave robbing?
Looting.
Looting. Grave robbing. Looting.
Salvaging.
Salvaging.
Hey, they're not going to use it anyway. They'll all
You got a bless you on the sneeze.
Yeah, I was gonna say someone blessed you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes.
We're so easily derailed.
You guys are usually just right there.
Yes, yes, we are.
Having cats.
Oh, and it's nearly halfway through. We should have a break.
Yeah. We'll just quickly wrap up this particular one because these specific ones before we started the stream. So the rest of it you can go back and watch the other things, but these specific ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, they go through and fight a few more things. A few different things pop up, and of course the figure continually pops up every time they have a combat, then disappears promptly at the end of it all. They didn't really struggle that much through the dungeon itself. Everything was basically in
The
their
big
favour.
spider.
Big spider?
Both big spiders
Yeah,
were a bit
yeah.
challenging.
Okay, the big
That
spider.
wasn't too bad a fight though.
That was the closest we had because we were sort of separated for that.
I
Yes.
think I missed the beginning of this session, actually.
think you did.
We
We both
I
did,
missed
we
it.
did.
Yeah, we
because
jumped
I
in
was like-
after the
Your
spiders.
computer is having problems.
Yes.
Good grief.
Yeah, we jumped in just after the spiders. Actually, I think literally the end of the fight,
Mm.
and then came down into the crypt.
And that's where I got my poison because I still have one flask left of that spider poison.
Oh yeah, you were trying to just like randomly cut out organs and drain them for poison.
Yep. And it
That's
worked.
That's the limit of your medicine skill.
It worked though.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Edgelord.
Towards the end, they managed to find a large crypt area.
I remember quite a bit of this.
Right. Well, I wasn't finished.
She was playing golf. No, tennis.
Tennis.
I found a ring.
Yes, you found a ring.
Well, I found it and gave it to you.
Oh, that's right. You made me
It
smash your
doesn't
front
matter
thing.
who found it.
It does.
The correct thing is, I have the ring still.
That is naturally what you do with giant spiders, scorpions, or anything else that notoriously has poison that everyone just goes, ooh, poison.
Dissect.
Dissect.
I believe
Smash
that
it.
before we went into this crypt, there was a discussion. Should we have a good snooze? In the
Well, that's
great
right,
D&D
yes.
way of, oh, I am mysteriously tired and feel magically drained. If I get 8 hours sleep, I reckon I'll be tougher for this fight.
And you said no, didn't you?
Wasn't that right, Mr. Paladin?
Spell slots are a thing.
Spell slots are a thing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Crying out loud.
So they came into the final part. So it was actually two parts that both looked like they were major graves of some particular people, but you never knew who they were, which which there was no information to tell you they were.
Did you
anyway.
deliberately stay back so that you wouldn't be in any explosion if things went bad?
No, you guys had all originally gone into the room.
Mm-hmm.
All of you guys went into the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you guys were doing your searching around and then doing stuff. I'm not specifically sure what you were doing.
You are correct.
You
in
decided
fact.
to actually leave the room to go to the other room because
No,
you
I
wanted to
found
look.
the sword in that room.
That
I
was-
found
Yeah,
it.
but you found the sword,
Oh,
and then
Yeah,
you went into the
mansions.
room, and then you decided to come back for some reason.
didn't we try to tie a rope around the top of the crypt
We did.
so we could open it from a distance?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
And
My
the two
character does not
squishiest
like
characters
ghosts.
decided we'll stand at the back of the room, right at the entrance, because that'll be safe.
Yeah.
We won't get attacked by there, because the bad guy's definitely going to come out of the crypt in front.
Yeah, my character doesn't
Yeah,
like
you guys-
That
ghosts
didn't
either.
happen.
It was my idea to use the whole like pulley system.
Yeah.
as
Well,
well.
you guys did pull off the lid of the thing, and nothing actually happened because you found one of the rings inside the other one as well.
Mm.
So you guys were feeling safe. There
My
was a certain
character-
element of that.
Did go back to the other room. She was like, "Oh well, there's a thing. I have an idea. I can't remember what it was, but she was like, I'm gonna try this thing because maybe that will
Do the thing.
do the thing, whatever the thing was." And then they activated while I was not in the room.
I think the
Designated.
activation was you leaving the room.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh,
I didn't know.
remember that.
Because you guys were all in the
You
room.
left the room and then the door shut.
Yes. So you
Yeah.
basically what
I'm pretty
it
sure we
was.
actually took something out of the second
We did.
crypt,
You did?
and that's what activated it.
I mean, we assumed that's what activated it.
Column A, column B.
a little bit of both.
Because I remember we
and a
picked something
sword.
up, and the ghost looked
There was
quite
a
pissed off at us.
there was a
for
lot of
doing so.
gems. There's a whole bunch of gems inside that.
No, you took the
coffin.
ring. You took the ring off the finger of the corpse in that coffin, and yes, I think he did look like he was not happy with your
I think.
decision.
Is it gems?
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think I
I'm
triggered
running
it straight away
anyway.
because not long after that, then she left the room,
Ah.
which
Nothing
to me
happened
was
yet.
basically you've taken the ring and
Stole.
you're leaving. Like you could take the ring, I'll give you a chance to go. No, I'm going to put it back. Then I'd be happy. But you decide to start leaving. First person left to go. No, that's it. Close the door. So the doors went shut of this particular crypt area, of which all 6 out of the 7 members were all trapped in there, except for the dwarf, the berserker, who would have done most of the damage and just probably ripped it apart.
Barbarian.
Now they're all level 2 at this stage. The CR of a wraith is 5.
If we add our levels together, we're fine.
That's also
So it popped up at the back of the party because it's wraith. It's not confined by certain, physical constraints by having to be coming from its grave or anything like that. And Murder Hoboed, the main healer of the group, being
It's not a
Imperious.
hobo, it has a home.
Yes.
You were robbing its home.
I didn't die. I didn't go down.
Yeah, you're pretty sure you did.
I didn't go down straight away. He went down straight away.
I didn't go down straight away.
No,
No, because he was able
Yeah.
to use wild magic at one point and fog the entire fucking room.
Yeah, you went down straight away.
Yeah, you went down straight away.
Yeah. But then you got
yo-yo
better.
back up. Yeah, I got better.
So
You got
I got my
yo-yo.
first yo-yo. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I wanted to be a wild magic sorcerer because I love the wild magic table. It is hilarious, and it says in the rules that the DM has the ultimate authority of when you can choose to roll on the wild magic.
I
table.
like wild mages too.
So I really wanted as much advantages as I could. So I just kept looking to Tim saying, "Can I have advantage?" And he was like, "Cool, roll wild magic." and so the first time I think it was just tossing a firebolt at this thing. I rolled wild magic and a giant cloud of fog occupied
That's right, occupied
most
the
of
whole
the
Filled
room.
almost the entire room.
So no one could see shit.
So I think it was an entire round of combat
Mm-hmm.
in fog.
Yeah.
No,
And
it was
then-
longer than that. It was just that some of the room, the door where the wraith wasn't in mist. The
So what
rest of the
happened
room-
next after? There wasn't too far after that. Then you basically became the main tank against the wraith, if I'm not mistaken.
I tried to beat my way through.
You tried to beat your way back through the door because you were stuck on the other side.
Did I
You
even
went
try
down
to
next.
open it? Or just straight away hack at it?
I think you just went straight to hack.
Yeah, I think
Then
it's just-
you came into next to be the tank. Yep.
And during that point, the wraith turned to him.
No, you guys don't remember because I remember it clearly. He's like standing off away a distance.
Yeah.
Like he was
He
probably
had like 2 hit points or something at the
he
time.
had like 10 or 15 hit points, and
okay.
I've egged him on a little bit. He goes, come on, just do it.
Yeah. I was standing back and just tossing firebolts, and like.
All you know was like, if you get closer, you can do burning hands.
Exactly.
That's exactly it.
Yes, I
You
was
got
like-
in close, you did your burning hands, you did some damage to it, and then the Wraith basically responded and critted you accidentally and did something close to 50 points of damage or something like that, which essentially killed you.
Mm-hmm.
And you became dust.
And that is how my first character died and became a running joke.
So,
Because
So
Yoda
you're
still
suddenly going
keeps a bag of
That
tiefling
one?
dust on his belt.
And at the same time, the Wraith was also attacking me through the door, I believe. After that.
you guys,
that.
It was after he died.
yeah, after he died, yeah.
After he died, the
'Cause-
Wraith was attacking
No,
me
it was
through
attacking
the
you
door.
through the door, then it went, fuck it, walk through the door to the other side where it was attacking you.
Yes.
So we were shooting through the holes in the door that
Yeah.
you
That's
made.
right, yeah, because I was hacking a hole through the door. I was trying to get back to my team.
No,
That's
it was
right. 'Cause
hack,
it-
hack,
it was
then
that's-
javelin.
Yep. That's right, correct. He did actually come out and try and attack you, and it
Yeah.
actually did take you
It
down
did.
too.
It also cursed me before it killed me, so I was on a max of like 10 HP or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
during
anytime
that
I
time,
died-
I was using the sword that he'd found in one of the crypts,
my
adamantium
character
great
found
sword.
it.
You should have
believe.
broken the door
I
because
found it.
adamantium's got.
Okay.
In
I
the
got it.
previous
I remember
room.
getting
It's
it.
Foresight's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Foresight's a
So I
wonderful
remember
thing.
getting it off him, and I'm like standing on the other side of the door, just jabbing the sword through the door at this Wraith, going, die!
You should have attacked the door though because
It was an adamantium
has,
greatsword. He
Yeah.
could have just like whacked the door in half of the adamantium greatsword.
Adamantium has like super advantage
but
on
my-
breaking non-material.
I remember I
Now I
also
know
died,
this!
Yeah.
and I was
so
like
it
this
would've just
close to
carved
being
the door in
permadeath
half
as well.
Like butter.
No.
I was like getting ready to reroll my
Have to keep an
character,
eye on that
and then
next
you.
time.
So by this stage in this fight, all three of the characters, so two of the main tanks as well as their somewhat main healer, had been taken out. It pumped back into the room again, jumped back into the room again, and decided to take up the mantle, of which you also took a hit, but you managed to make the save, so you weren't drained of the hit
Yeah,
points.
Yeah.
my
You managed to
wisdom
get
is cool.
healed again, because I think you did get back up.
Yeah, I
and
was
got
back
healed
up
again.
and I was going between firebolt and heal, firebolt and heal.
And then it attacked again, got you to like,
And then
because it was basically, I think I did take you out again, because I can't remember, because I think you weren't there again, or you ran out of spells. I wasn't sure which one of the
Yeah.
two. Because
I
basically,
ran out of spells because I wasn't on full spells
yeah,
already.
it's because these two guys were doing the whole backstabby sort of thing against it, and they needed someone in hand-to-hand combat with him.
DPS pretty heavy.
Yeah, actually, I ran out of healing spells, so all I had left
Yeah,
was
because
my
you were
firebolt.
warlock totally at that point, weren't you?
No, I had the level.
No, he had one level of rogue. He
I
was
was
one
sneak
level
attacking
rogue.
with a bow,
Yeah.
which is why for the entire fight I took 0 damage.
Yeah. I didn't
That's
get
right.
that.
The
No,
first
yeah,
time
you
your
two
character
were
took
using your
damage,
bows
wasn't
and
it
basically
from
doing the
the
backstab.
bow?
No, the hyenas before
Kiting
where I got
with a
taken out.
rapier.
Oh, okay.
So
No, I'm pretty sure you were
jumping
using
in,
a bow.
backstabbing out.
I'm pretty sure you were using a bow too.
Was that?
Bit of both.
Yeah. Both?
Yeah.
I think
but
it's just
I don't think
schematics
either
we
of us
can.
did.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not.
Semantics.
It's semantics. It's not,
It's not
not
Yes.
schematics.
Ah,
Words.
Words.
words are difficult.
Anyway, so
I
you
like
two,
words.
because of the tank being there, were able to
Yeah.
consistently backstab it because of the way the 5th edition
As
rules.
long as you're within 5.
As long as you were within 5 feet of him, now you were getting on the point of also going down.
I
as
was
well.
almost about
And it
to
was
die.
also coming to the point of like if you gone down, there's basically no one left that could take this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have just basically gone through you two and just ripped you up, ripped you a new asshole.
Yeah, puff of dust sort of thing.
It did another hit, and because the sheer amount of damage that they can do, you were on like 20 something odd hit points at that stage. So you were at that point where you could have gone down. I rolled enough damage to put you on 2 hit points. I rolled low.
Yeah, I know.
And then somehow these two guys together managed to take out the Wraith with the remaining damage that was there. And it was a very good fight. It was a very exciting fight and very interesting fight.
I
nonetheless.
died.
Rowan died.
Yeah, it was a great fight.
We collected,
No more wild magic!
we collected the ash of the tiefling, and we did have intentions of potentially rezzing him in the future.
Oh, and that ash is resistant to fire.
I'm sure you can rub it in.
Pour it on yourself.
I'm going to point out.
We are the Grey Warriors.
I'm going to point out.
I've just had a thought as a
But-
GM. Anyway.
The home of Euron is Aris,
home of Euron Zaris.
Oh
Yes,
god.
that's where
That's where the tiefling's from.
that's where the tieflings are.
Ah,
Zaris.
yes.
Oh, great, we're going to come across his family or something.
Yes,
Awesome. Yeah, Hudson Dust.
his family is a group of perfectly ordinary-looking human nobles.
Where have I heard this before?
Perfectly ordinary-looking human nobles.
Looking.
That absolutely are not tieflings, all with disguised self spells active on them
At all times.
at all times.
And that was the end. That was the end of that particular interesting little dungeon.
Is
I think I put you guys up to level 3 after that.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna try and remember where you guys went off.
We went
sorry.
back to the port
You
after
went back to
that,
the port?
and along the way we acquired a friend from the forest.
Oh, that's right.
Friend is a strong word.
Forest is
Fred might be going a bit overboard.
Well, we should explain, Pat. We found a friend, then lost a friend, then found him again because someone had to go on a holiday to
Yes.
Europe.
I joined the party as my new character,
Yeah, it's live.
and then you guys spent like 3 weeks fighting in the arena while I was in
Hey,
England.
Rodney.
Ah, yeah.
Very cool.
how you doing?
Yeah.
So you were all doing like fighting in an arena while I was in England. So I missed a big chunk there.
Oh, that whole the arena thing's a whole nother.
Yeah, that really
We'll get there, we'll get there.
All right, we'll get there. We'll get
That
there.
is a good
Yeah.
part.
I think you guys basically went back to the Port of Warming just to sort of do a couple of housekeeping things,
Yeah.
Upgrade our gear.
upgrade your gear a little bit.
Oh, and someone spent like a week trying to find a poison.
We have a new follower.
I still don't have
Get to that.
poison kit.
Actually, no, this right, because that's right. You did do the Warmier as well, didn't you?
He's done it in every town.
The poison kit is actually very pivotal about going into Eris. Okay, so basically, Rayleigh has decided with the poison that he got from the spiders, which is this is really important, that he needed a poisonous kit to actually do it with them. So he'd been going from place to place to place to place to try and find these poison the kit. And generally, what I do is I sit in the background, I roll my d20, and depending on what I roll my d20, it dictates if they have it or not. And every time he asked for a poisonous kit, I would be rolling low, so they never had it. And that's all it really came down to. So he had this big quest of just getting bigger and bigger and bigger about finding the poisonous kit.
The other thing with that though is his character is an urchin who gets the ability to know like the layout of the towns, who knows all the vendors, all the shopkeepers, has all the insider knowledge, and still couldn't find it.
Yep.
Well, he also has like shit charisma, so every time he talks to someone, they just.
-2.
That's my wisdom. It's better to be on charisma than wisdom.
So after they decided they had enough of Warmia, they were given a letter from a particular gentleman.
Just say, didn't we make
A
contact
fine,
with these
upstanding businessman in the waste collection industry.
Yes,
Waste collection.
waste collection.
Waste collection.
New York.
Mafia.
I was going to say Chicago.
I didn't know the New York mafia was into waste collection.
They're all waste management services.
Oh boy.
How much does the program?
Alright.
So you guys decided to head off to Gdansk, which was basically the major city of Warmia. You head there, and you decide to go to the tavern that you were told about, which was a point of contact, I think, if I remember correctly. And then set yourselves up there, and then head to where you had to hand the letter in.
The much nicer tavern.
Yes, where we had to order
The Gilded Lodge.
The Gilded Lodge.
Where we had to order in Gigants. The Gustanet family was the group who spoke to them later, but it was Drake soup, peas, and a tankard of ale.
But you weren't at the Gilded Lodge, you were at...
No. So I decided. This is where I started taking notes. Hang on. So I do remember also when we walked into Gdansk
Yeah.
that we came across the slaves.
No, that was
Was that-
after this.
That was
Yeah,
after.
yeah,
I'm getting to that. I'm getting
Okay.
to that.
We didn't get to the.
This is
slave-
about you guys
That's a very
going.
important point.
This is a
Okay.
very important point. You guys went to the tavern first because we had a bit of fun with the
I
tavern.
didn't like that tavern. I was like, fuck that shit. They're all humans and whatnot. I'm gonna go find the
You
dwarves.
had both kind of people, hoity and toity.
I wanted I wanted short, loud, and stumpy. Alright?
We had axes, we could get one of them.
So they had both types of people, stumps and stilts.
I was going to say, if you've got an axe, you can get all of them because they'll be very loud as you're cutting them.
Tell them all
You mean legs?
That's one way to defeat your enemies.
So yes, you guys decided you were going to name the tavern.
Yes, the Crooked Lodge.
The Crooked Lodge.
But before that, I do remember I went past the college or something.
No, we went to the Collegium later.
No, not the Collegium. There was okay. So yeah, I went to a alchemy thing and failed miserably trying to find the alchemy guild. And then there was like a ring of.
Sorry, I'm just reading your notes. Attack the bomb!
Okay, so my notes.
Save that for when we get there.
My notes are written in amber. That's my character's name. They're very, very entertaining. So we'll get to that one day.
Yeah, don't forget the sequence of events.
Okay. No, we visited like the god statues and stuff.
You visited
Which that one?
you visited the gazebo.
That's the one, gazebo. That's what I was. Yeah, and anyway, at the River Lodge, I met Greeters? Gdansk? No. Oh no, Gdansk, that's the
That's the place.
place.
Is that echo happening when we're loud?
Oh no, Lauren Schwartz.
Lauren Schwartz.
Yeah, that's the one. She was the dwarf at the dwarven place.
More dwarfy than
More
dwarf.
dwarfy than the dwarf.
And she was telling stories. And then they asked for Amber to tell a story.
And that's where it all went.
In which case, everyone discovered that Amber tells her stories backwards.
Rattle scratch. You probably wondered how I got there.
And then we all died, was essentially how she started that story off. And she proceeded to tell it backwards from the point where she died, and then fought a wraith, and then before that was wandering through a tomb, etc., 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 to how she met her friends. That was the story she told.
Alright, after you guys have set yourselves into the taverns and got yourselves acquainted with some of the people in the town and have a bit of fun in the dwarven tavern with the dwarf, you decided that the only thing really you were doing in town the next day was to actually hand this letter in. You travelled part of Gdansk over a bridge of the river going through the place. And a lot of barges come through this area because Gdansk is a bit of an inland city.
I love my notes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately the echo, I know what the echo is, and unfortunately because of the audio just having to change it around just in the last moment, I know exactly why it's happening, and there's not much I can do about it at this stage. Hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah, the audio should all be fixed by next week. We've had to make some compromises and improvisations for this week because stuff was just refusing to work.
Yes. Anyway, as I said, they were travelling over the bridge, over the river that goes through Gdansk. Seeing all the barges come through and travelling over the river from where they were, so they were kind of like on the left-hand side, the western side of the city. They were travelling over the bridge and then travelling towards the eastern side of the city, which was considered the upper part of the city, as well as where the big pig was. And that's where they had to go to a mansion, talk to someone they didn't quite know at that stage, and then just talk and hand the letter over.
It was the Gustav.
Don't. I know who it is. I'm not going to say who it is. In doing so, on their travel there, they passed what was now turned into a slave pit. So they were selling slaves. It used to be a trade hub when the Order had taken over this particular part of town, but once the coterie had taken over,
On the way there, wasn't selling slaves, it was selling monsters.
Yes, it was selling monsters originally, yes.
Bugbear and...
Yes.
Oh, owlbear and...
Oh, that's what that's right, that's the one she...
Yeah.
Yes, there was an owlbear, there was a bugbear, all sorts of stuff. That's right, that's what you would buy.
Yeah.
Then when you guys went... as a group to go over to this particular thing, that's when you saw 4 Dragonborn being put up to slave auctions.
Yeah, my character was none too pleased about this.
Tell us why. What is your character?
Yolan the Dragonborn Fighter?
What is your full name?
Yolan Ganks.
Always good to have a verb as your surname.
Yeah,
Also known as.
No, we'll get to that.
We'll get to
we'll get to that later.
Oh, we haven't got that far yet.
Good point. That's probably when we'll introduce my
But
character.
the fact that one of the Dragonborn that they had up for auction was a brass dragon, which is the same scale colour as my own, I got quite upset and basically wanted to murder most of the slavers in the town centre.
However, you decided not to do it right at that particular stage
Yeah,
after
right,
convincing the rest of the party
convincing.
because you would have just got yourself killed.
Yeah.
And who in our party is excellent at convincing people of things?
Apparently,
Sometimes.
You say something.
So they
He's
decided
waiting for the
after they handed the letter into the gentleman to head back to the tavern and figure out what they want to do next. They found out that there was a halfling who had been the one who had actually won the bid, and he was the one that actually managed to get the 4 Dragonborn. They got back to their tavern and they decided what to do next. Yorlin was still very angry, so they said to Yorlin, go blow off some steam, go to the arena, and just go for a fight and blow off some steam.
And Amber decided to go with
And Amber decided to go with
because
them.
of course Amber, being the barbarian dwarf, was like, hell yeah, fight!
And the purpose for this was so that you'd stay out of trouble while we found out information about who bought those slaves.
And I believe that
Except-
myself and Amir went to the Collegium for the first time then
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so Yorlin and Amber discovered
I
for
think I stopped by.
themselves
Oh.
who...
I think you did stop by, but not. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
No,
did.
because
I
we
went to the
versed
astronomical
a
study.
bunch of peasants in
Hang
the
on,
first
hang on.
round.
Let's skip ahead.
But we did end up finding for ourselves who, or what happened to those Dragonborns. Yes, we did.
Try not to talk over each other. Actually, it's probably a better way of putting it. So yeah, I think you guys did go to the Collegium for a little bit. I think you might have been talking to about getting admission.
Yeah, that was when we were trying to hide from the other people who wanted to kill us. That was later.
Okay. Yes.
No, we went to the port to try and bribe some of the people there to look at the ledger, and that failed.
Yep.
So then we're sort of coming back from that.
All right. So you guys decided to go to the arena and have a fight. You guys were nobodies as far as they were concerned, so they threw you in a fight with like 4 or 5 peasants essentially.
Yeah.
We were
And
not
of which
happy.
you were not happy, and you just made mincemeat of them.
We didn't even attack them with weapons. I think we just like.
Yeah.
No, the first couple we did, and then we realised just how squishy they were, so I started punching them.
Yeah. It got
Yeah, we
quite
didn't mean to kill them. It was accidental.
Yeah.
It's always accidental murder, premeditated beyond belief.
So after they've had that particular fight, they've come back to the person who's looking after them, who's doing the fight matching. They've said, give us something better than that.
Give us a fucking
Give
challenge.
us a fucking challenge was basically what it was. So, being a smartass that he was, he decided to
Smart- I
talk
think
to...
even
Like, this is the background, you guys didn't see this. He decided to talk to that halfling and say, hey, I've got a particular dragonborn here who wants a good fight. And so, he decided that he'd throw you up against the 4 dragonborn that were just purchased by the halfling. So you and Amber had basically got...
Little meat piles.
I thought that said meat pies.
Piles. I read it as pies at first too.
Now, you guys had basically, and a bit of time was going to go to the next match, so you guys were able to go back to the rest of your group and tell them what was going on, and then a couple of hours later you came back and...
No.
Was it a couple of hours?
No, they were locked away.
Yeah, we
Oh, that's
No,
right,
we
that's right,
stayed
yeah.
in the arena. We didn't
That's right,
leave.
That's why. Yeah,
That's why you guys came and
jumped the fence.
investigated to see where the heck we'd gone
Because
because we
of us who
hadn't come
managed to.
back.
Yes.
Oh, I jumped the fence
That's
eventually.
right. So
No,
the rest of the
you fell
party,
the fence.
the rest of the party decided to
Didn't
figure,
land.
somehow you guys found out that they were in the arena. I don't know. I can't remember how.
Well, they
And
knew
you-
we were there.
Yeah, and you guys decided that you would go into the audience area and watch the fight itself. Then you realised it was these 2 guys fighting for Dragonborn.
The 4 dragon.
The 4 Dragonborn. Now, as a GM, I was like, I'll make it strong enough so these 2 people would have no problems fighting this, and it wouldn't be that much of a drama. You know, bit of push shove, bit of maybe go down 1 or 2, maybe the 4 Dragonborn would probably just get their asses handed to them by the 2 party members that were already in the arena.
We don't roll very well.
Who don't roll very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably would have killed me because of my rolls.
I'm just glad I
However-
don't take much damage because I roll pretty shit too.
However, probably not even halfway through the fight, or probably like a round or 2 within the fight,
Yeah.
the rest of the party decided to jump in.
No, one of them flew in.
I was about to get to that.
And one of them fell in.
I was about to get to that.
Meanwhile, perfect acrobatic pirouette.
So the Asimar who has wings decided to activate the wings, and
My
then
first ever activation.
first activation of the wings, fly over the
Did you
wall
roll potion of Red Bull?
into
I
the
just-
fight.
Descended heavenly upon the battlefield and he cured wound someone.
Also, on this note, as I saw all of them appear, I told everyone to not kill any of the Dragonborn.
That will become important.
Sorry, message is breaking up. Sorry, what did you say? I've got a bad reception here.
That will become very important shortly.
Do something to a Dragonborn. Okay, yep.
So you go in first, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the full events. Then I think you jumped
I
in
went
the
in
following
first to
round.
cast heal on someone.
Me, probably, because
yeah.
I was being...
Yeah, so you go in first. You cast heal on him.
Someone was pretty
You jump in
fucking-
next, and you go
We
into.
Dragonborn
I
was
was gonna say, I
stabbing
jumped
his
in
back.
fine.
You jumped in fine.
But
He triple somersaulted in.
Yeah. Was it another round before you decided to start jumping, if I'm not mistaken?
No, I tried climbing and failed 3 times in a row.
Yes.
And
I
then, you
couldn't
said,
lift. I couldn't do a pull-up over the rail.
Which is like waist high.
and then you said, can I please just like
Fall in.
and take a bit of damage?
Yeah. So he eventually just rolled
He
in.
just like went fine, headbutt like over the railing and
So-
just whee!
At this point, I had only just recently started using
dusted
my
yourself up with really
meta
fine
magic
ow.
abilities, and so I decided to try out Twin Spell with Inflict Wounds at maximum level on one of the Dragonborns, and rolled a critical. So it was, I think it was like what,
50,
12 or
60?
13 or 15 d10 damage to the
It was
Dragonborn.
58 damage in total.
Yeah, I disintegrated the poor thing.
We had a new pile of dust.
I was
like
very,
cells.
very sorry. It was meant to just like
And it was a
inflict a bit
massive
of wounds.
amount of overkill, I can tell you that right now. So the organisers of the arena match have realised, who the fuck are these people coming into the arena and making this match just not good?
Now we're murder hobos.
Now you murder hobos, that's right. So they decided to open up the gates and bring in a hill giant and a minotaur.
That's a lie.
No,
because
two
as a, like,
giants.
As a
No,
Pokemon,
it
I
was a
had
hill
someone
giant
with
and a
all
minotaur.
that.
Was it just one?
No, but you do not have a fixed address.
I don't know. I thought it was two.
No, just one.
Hobos have places to live, park
One-
benches, and under bridges.
I have a place to kind of stay.
Yeah, any stone hole in the ground.
Excuse you. I am very welcome at the Alchemy Guilds. I pay my monthly.
Only because I've met
Membership?
you.
That's why I'm a traveller. You see, I just travel to the different. I just don't return. It's fine.
Yeah, it's the second night.
You're staying one step ahead of your pub tab.
Burn
Anyway,
every bridge
so-
across.
So this became just a normal. Now you weren't here because you were in London at this stage.
I was in jolly old England, my home. It was
I
lovely.
just realised we missed one of the things at the tavern, the pop-up tavern. When I firebolted the guy across the room because he had assaulted someone.
No, he tried to. That was the loaded dice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did.
And there's just suddenly
I've actually-
firebolt from across the room. He's like,
I expect us to forget a couple of things here and there, so that's all right. It was a fun role-playing thing, but we completely.
So
forgot
we're
what we were
facing
doing.
a hill giant and a minotaur,
Facing
and
a hill giant.
expected to lose.
Yes. Which they didn't.
Surprisingly.
The Minotaur charged
for teamwork.
someone 3 times in a row, and I rolled miserably
Yeah,
for them.
it literally did nothing the
Yeah.
whole fight. It was just there as a meat shield.
I'm pretty sure I went one-on-one with one of them as well.
Well, one of
The
you
hill
guys
giant
did-
was
in,
going
the- in the end, it was the paladin who
It was going full defense.
going
Yeah.
full defense
Yeah.
against
He
it.
just tanked
Full
the
defensive
crap
is
out of
very
that
good.
little giant.
It's just
very
I
good.
remember I went down because I was one-on-one with
Yes.
someone, and I went down because I was taking damage after damage after damage. And then the turn I went down, it went off to someone else. I popped back up, someone rezzed me,
Yes.
and I charged, barrel killed that thing.
This was where I fully explored the abilities of yo-yoing people.
I believe that would have been the hill giant that you would have killed.
Yeah.
Healing words! Healing word! Healing word!
I went to
Also, to
5
explain,
points
you
and then went to full defense. I'm like, I can't take any
you
more
are
points.
the divine
Yes,
sorcerer.
I am a divine soul sorcerer, so I have access to both cleric spells and sorcery spells, but using meta magic on it, which means I can twin cast healing word on people from a distance and yo-yo people back to life. It means this poor bugger has a really hard time killing us now.
Which is why we have some house rules now.
Yes.
We can get to that later.
Yeah, succession, 4 characters.
Succession 4 characters. Well done, Romy.
Yeah.
That's a good effort.
Romney's an old friend of mine, actually.
Nice.
You probably actually know him too.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys finished that particular arena fight, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of people were not happy with
No.
the way that went.
Yeah. We had the gladiator moment.
Yes.
They were very angry.
Are you not entertained?
So you were given an ultimatum.
Did I make it the next day? I think I did make it the next day.
Come
Yeah.
next week.
Oh, it was 3 days, I think it was.
Yeah, we had a few.
we talked them around because we were saying that
That's
they're
right,
gonna
you
have
did.
the best business.
Some of your charisma rolls kicked in this particular time. You decided that let's do this properly. Let's give us the best you've got, and let's have a really good fight about it and make it a big thing.
Who?
I was being the spokesperson of the party at this stage.
Was being
What?
Less so now.
Yeah, less so now. We'll get into that particular.
Well. Anyway.
Funny as it is, I think having like one main enemy for all of them to fight sort of works, so they don't fight each other.
Yeah.
I thought I was the main enemy for everyone.
Not yet, you weren't.
Desert dwelling half elf warlock with some rogue thrown in there as well. Focusing on charisma, so all the social skills,
My character does.
and
My character.
can get some outrageous lies for people to believe at times.
So you guys were given 3 days to the next match, which you were basically not told what you were going to fight.
I believe.
And
We
then
went to investigate.
we left the arena and
No,
was
we were-
greeted by a.
We were told we were going to get 5,000 gold.
Yes.
Before we left the arena, didn't we get a visit from 3 different people?
Yes.
Yeah, because people money.
I'm pretty sure at which stage.
I thought that was after the next fight, though.
Yeah.
No, it was because one of them, we thought they were trying to kill us, which is why we skedaddled out of that pub before he found us. And then he went back home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember when. I
No,
knew
we
it was
found
in
that
the
this was
arena.
the groupies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the groupies.
So
when we
as
first left.
as they left
Okay.
for this particular fight, everyone, there was a large group of
That's
people
my
suddenly.
next set of notes.
Did you get the groupies? Did I get the groupies at the end of that fight or at the end of the Hydra fight? I
No,
can't
at the
remember.
end of that fight.
Oh,
That
at the end of
fight.
that
They were
fight.
pissed off because we basically cheated that arena battle and
No,
threw
no.
20 people in.
No, we're talking about the fans.
We were
Yeah.
waiting at the gate.
Yeah,
Waiting at
because
the
we
gate.
had just killed a mountain giant and a minotaur, which we
And we were
theoretically
nobodies.
should not have been able to
We
do.
were nobodies. And they were like, oh, how are you guys? We want to know your names.
I do remember as we were waiting for the person to come talk to us about the next fight, we were waiting in the thing. We were told that the guards would see to whatever we sort of needed. So I was saying, you guard, please, I need a hooker and a hooker.
That's right, because you were actually part of the fight, were you?
I was, but then I bailed midway
Ah, that's right.
because I had to go home. So
Yeah.
character-wise, we played it as I think someone else took over my
He
character.
just sat there
while I
shooting
left.
arrows.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that's
So
right.
I was
Yeah.
part of the fight, but I
But
wasn't
somehow you managed to avoid this next part.
here. Yes.
No, as soon as you saw the group there, you went,
I went
I don't
stealth
know
and
these
backed out.
guys.
I go stealth.
Yeah. So everyone else was stuck around.
So they got
dealing with groupies.
approached
I
by
bailed.
basically a whole heap of people who suddenly became new fans. And of course, as new fans and them not wanting to know who they truly were,
Yes.
they came up with pseudonyms.
We? I think you mean he.
He came up with pseudonyms. So what did he come up with for everyone ever been in the party?
I'll tell you now, my character was
No,
not.
it's up to him to tell us. Yeah.
Well, I'll go through my reasoning as well. So I figured, well, the dwarf is kind of stupid, so I'd have something similar to what the name already was, to hope that you'll actually have a chance of remembering it.
Which didn't actually work.
So instead of Iron Fist, it was Stone Fist.
Stormfist.
Storm Fist, was it? Yeah. I made up some nonsensical wind caller, wind something.
Win something, yeah.
Yeah.
It's written down somewhere.
I wanted the meekest of the group to have the most impressive sounding name. So our healing pacifist astronomer was called the Scourge of Aris.
And considering that they watched me disintegrate a dragonborn, they weren't going to question that fact.
On wings, you flew in. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
flew in.
Descend from the heavens, heal someone, disintegrate another person.
I give life.
Take it away.
I am your god.
Alpha and Omega. Our lovely paladin with the excellent accent. He was Jean-Luc,
Jean-Luc.
because it's the first French name I could think of.
Should have just said St. Paul.
Yeah, you should have just been St. Paul.
Shout out!
I'll probably put people who don't actually go to LARP. St. Paul is the name of one of the LARPers characters there, and he's reasonably well known amongst the LARPs. That's why. That's,
Leader of the Fighters Guild.
Yeah. He's not all that.
Visual rivalries.
Visual rivalries.
And then for the Dragonborn, I was trying to think of some flame thing. I was thinking Latin, so it's kind of like Ignatius, igniting, Ignis sort of thing.
And then I've gone.
And then I couldn't think of a surname. And then I had an assistant, like an alley-oop from the support team.
It was Ignatius D.
Ignatius D with the battle axe of destiny.
Well, what I think initial D.
Initial D, yeah.
The funny thing is, this ended up because certain people at Quest can't separate. I ended up having
people just have too much
some
fun.
random peasants come up to me at Quest going, Ignatius D, I'm your biggest fan, can I please have an autograph?
Yeah, this was a last quest.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It was like, what, 3 silver well spent.
On the last day, someone came up to me in the tavern and asked, and I went, tell you what, do you have a pen? I'm like, I don't care, I'm costing him his 2 silver.
Because this joke had carried on a fair bit.
Yeah, we're trying to also give you some of the background, some of the in-jokes that are going on. So Ignatius D and the Scourge of Eris were the 2 main ones.
So I really remember the other.
Oh, and mascot.
I slipped away.
Yeah, you're the best.
No, he turned up next fight.
Yeah,
I'm like, who the hell is he? He's like, he's our mascot.
I believe
That's right, the druid who contained you to an animal. That's right, the mascot. Yeah.
I believe it was. They all got their nicknames. Then I turned up next session and was all like, "Wait, what's going on? Wait, what's happening?"
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
You didn't get a nickname, did you?
No, I slipped out.
He slipped out.
So
What happened?
he
Yeah.
never had one.
He was just the guy in the corner.
Oh, no.
The shadow.
So
I was going to say the shadow.
I reckon 1 or 2 people in the crowd might have been perceptive enough to say, hey, there was one more guy there, where did he go? But no one's actually caught on to it yet. So
Alright, so before we go on to the next part, after they've got their pseudonyms, we're going to have a break.
Cigarette break.
Cigarette break. So we'll be back in 10-15 minutes. And to fill up our drinks, and probably try and eat some of the cheese in my fridge.
You're welcome, hang on. You're welcome to stay in the chat because some of us will stay to converse with you.
As long as you guys can hear us now and it's not echoing and everything's good, let's get into the next part of it. I'm probably going to skip a few things here and there because we've actually gone through very little off the actual game itself.
Yeah, we've still got quite a bit to cover.
We've still got quite a bit to cover.
Yeah,
Okay.
attacking the butt.
So after they've been accosted by the groupies and got their new synonyms, and their new names, Ignatius D and the Scourge of Eris, and the mascot.
Well, I believe I was
The
not
mascot gets named later.
I arrived at this point, like,
We found you in an alchemy shop.
No. Yeah.
how did I rejoin the party?
I can't remember.
You found her in an
I
alchemy
think you
shop.
just joined into the game. You joined in when they were in the arena.
No.
No, it was at an alchemy shop.
Yeah,
Emma found him in an alchemy
Oh, that's right.
I went to the alchemy shop
Mm-hmm.
and
And
I
made your
conversed.
first.
I conversed with the alchemist.
The cow skull, because he found he was willing to shit in a field.
That's right.
My character had decided that they needed a way to escape because obviously they'd had some shady. These guys had we had an encounter where we were like we have to avoid the
Yep,
tavern
that's
or
true. The
whatever.
bottom camera has frozen.
It is. And that explains why we got the feedback. Keep going with the story. Keep going with the story.
Anyway, yeah. So we were escaping whatever. Anyway, she's like, "Well, we need a way to escape." So
Wait, so I can
I'm
do
gonna
this
make
and
them
no one can see what I'm doing.
for now. You won't.
Just make sure it's the right
Anyway,
camera.
so
frame.
my character decided to make a smoke bomb. She didn't have anything to put it in, and she saw a cow skull at the alchemy shop. Or did you have this cow skull?
No.
No.
I would not have had a cow skull.
I couldn't remember. Okay, so I saw that. And so she was like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's use a cow skull as a container for this smoke bomb. And I just managed to, roll high enough that it actually worked.
I believe.
I think.
I believe how it went was you went into the alchemy shop to like talk through the semantics of making a smoke bomb.
Yeah.
At which point my character walks in.
Yeah.
Then
And you ordered all the plants.
yes, I used actually no, I used it was the NPC Tim was playing said that you need a cow manure for a smoke bomb.
Oh, that's right.
And I said, and I just said like off the top of my head enthusiastically, I can do that. Everybody laughed, and then
And a friendship was born.
Yeah, so
A friendship
it was at
forged
this point,
over.
it was
that the dwarf and the druid became very,
Yes.
very good friends.
the alchemist said,
Intimate friends.
what, do you just carry around a bag of cow manure? And I said, technically. And then I used a druid craft to make all the plants growing on her desk bloom. And she went, oh, you're a druid. Oh.
And finally it dawned on her.
Yeah.
So I made a smoke bomb, and then
Okay.
we rejoined the group, but I spent like that whole 3 days doing alchemy things. I remember that. Other than, of course, avoiding the inn where seemingly nefarious peoples were.
And we found out information due to one of our informants.
Oh! How about you say the story about how you got drunk? And then the skunk
No, that's later. That's
No,
later.
that's later.
That's later.
I think that was.
That was after we went to the
After
collegium.
the-
We came back, so that was after we got the information and we
Was
were
that
working out.
before?
That was after the arena.
Yeah, it was after the arena.
So first we had someone rock up at the tavern that we were staying at.
That's highly entertaining. You've got the both That's continuous.
Yeah, I know. Just keep going with your story.
You can resize the bottom one if you need to.
Yeah, so we had
The whole system is
Food bar.
crapping itself because the camera's passed out. So
we got a warning that
Damn you, camera.
one of the people who had bet against us was coming to the tavern, and we thought that he was gonna be a bit rowdy, so we snuck out the back.
Oh, it's because he was dressed well, so we thought he was dangerous.
And
Bodyguards with him too.
That's how things work in this game.
how did we get information about the pyrohydra in the first place?
We were kidnapped.
Oh yeah, that's right. We got kidnapped.
Yeah, we got kidnapped.
And then he gave us the information about the pyrohydra.
Kidnapped by the half-orc,
Yeah.
who's
And-
also on the list.
and-
what?
And he gave us he gave us potions.
No, he forced us to drink a potion without saying what it was.
Yeah, and it turned out to be fire resistance.
And maybe a bit of something else.
He gave us information about the pyrohydra, so we decided to go to the collegium to find some information on it. I stumbled across a astronomer's experiment, which gave us we witnessed some kind of event in the night sky of possibly a falling star, possibly something more.
I remember Amber quietly pulled up a chair to listen, and by quietly I mean dragged very loudly.
So I cast silence on her.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was necessary. Then we acquired about membership into the Collegium, found out it was outrageously overpriced.
I was fine. I was using that as a protection thing.
Yeah. So we decided not to pay it. We also tried to get into the library to get information on it.
Oh, then we tried to like corrupt some students at Hogwarts. I mean, at the Collegium, to do our research for us. And if they did, they'd get an autograph from Ignatius, didn't we?
Interview with someone.
Oh yeah.
Ignatius had an interview.
Oh, yeah. I'm watching how you modify all the windows.
I'm pretty sure the interview was after the fight, though.
Yeah.
It was after the Pyro.
Yeah.
So yeah, we then went to the tavern.
We were offering to sell the Hydra's heads.
Yeah.
Before we'd even killed it.
Yeah.
I do remember at some point, I believe it was after we got kidnapped by the orc and he forced us to take the potion. Now, Rayleigh wasn't here for that.
Yeah.
Everyone else was.
You missed that session.
And the guy's like, who the fuck is this person? And that's, I think, where we introduced you as our mascot.
He's our mascot.
Who are you?
It was at this point that Amber decided, shit, we can't chop off their heads. That's going to be a problem. I know, their tails don't grow back. Let's kill them in the butt. So from then onwards, her mind was like, just hit it in the butt. Just attack the butt. Yeah.
That worked so well, didn't it?
And then,
And then our head fell off.
the thing about that is because the thing about 5th edition D&D is that it's simplified. It's designed to make it so it's easy to access and people are getting to it. So one of the rules for a Hydra in 5th edition, and I think it's common for most editions, but we found it prominent in this particular edition, is that when a Hydra takes a certain amount of damage, a head will fall off. And it doesn't matter how it takes the damage or where that takes the damage, if it takes a certain amount of damage, a head falls off.
I think part of the reason for that is you're not meant to be able to have cold shots. It's I attack the Hydra, and then you would interpret
Yes.
how that plays out.
That is correct. But, you know, if people start getting into the logic of, well, if I just chop the arse end of it and not go for the head, then why will the head come off?
We hit it in the toe, and a head falls.
And because of how large the Hydra was, the dwarf was moving through various squares, getting attacks of opportunity from several heads to get to the butt.
Well, yeah, so I'm aware of how the rules work in 5e. I know that no matter where I hit this thing, it's still going to make the heads fall off. But I wanted to play it as my character would. So she would run in to attack the butt, because in her mindset, the butt is the only safe place to attack. Right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I went with that. Took
Also,
quite a number of hits in the process.
For you, butt is at kind of like eye level for.
It kind of is like perfect, you know, like.
Weapon range.
Yeah.
And also during the fight, being very mechanical. For a traditional Hydra, I believe the best way to kill it is to use fire damage to keep is to like
But is the
To cauterize.
to cauterize the head so it don't go back. A fire Hydra would not have that weakness.
So it fell down to you to use your
Yes.
frost spells to stop the heads growing back. We eventually did enough damage to kill the thing off.
I had specced into ice magic because I thought it was flavorful for the Van Warem elf with the ties to the frost guard.
Yeah, so now we have a fire
ice
mage
magic.
and an ice mage. That looks
Now, about halfway through the fight, probably about 2 or 3 rounds in, they were basically owning this Hydra.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of those interesting things as a GM that you're trying to get this balance going so you can create an exciting fight, but it wasn't becoming very exciting. They were pretty much owning it. So there was a particular reason for it, but one of the wizards up in the pavilions started healing it as well. So we got healed a couple of times to keep the fight going a bit longer. And part of the, while they were having the fight, they were sort of like trying to see what was going on with it, and they saw that the half-orc who had talked to them earlier, one of the 3 people who had made large bets on them, had thrown a mug at this guy to stop him from casting spells.
There's also a barrier on the roof, so he couldn't.
Yeah, I
fly
tried
out.
to fly up and hit my head on an invisible barrier. That was fun.
Why don't you try to shoot?
Yeah.
You tried to shoot an arrow at the guy.
They wanted to draw the crowd's attention to him.
I don't shoot.
That's right, I think you did.
I
think you did
javelin?
shoot at him.
I know, no.
If
Or
you-
I axe
It hit
He,
the
he
mag-
was the only one who actually noticed him at first, the
Yeah.
mage.
It hit the magical ceiling, which was enough for the half-orc to realise that, So the half-orc just threw his mug as far as he could. This guy to stop him from casting spells.
I believe another quite pivotal character moment occurred in that fight. Right before the Hydra was finished off, he ran away from everybody else and just mauled Rowan into oblivion because he realised that he was the one keeping the heads from growing back.
Yep.
And that's kind of where his favourite fire came from, because he was taken to negatives in one attack by a ball of flaming heads.
Sometimes like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to be tactical now. Just go for the person who's causing the most
So
pain.
where does your fear of crabs come from?
Oh dear. We'll get to the crabs later.
Normally you can burn off crabs with fire.
So it was
Experience
after
yourself?
after that battle, almost all of the party had been dropped to barely any hit points. So most of the party was borderline dead.
I couldn't make the next session, so I was in hospital.
Yeah, a lot of people couldn't make it
also couldn't
early
make
on,
that,
so
I was there with you.
there was a few people who were in
So
hospital.
this is very important because this comes to the part of why we're going to Eris. Because yes, you're quite correct. There were several members who couldn't come for that particular session. You were one of them. And so those who were left, which is Rayleigh, and I think you were there. Oh no, you were away as well, I think.
Possibly.
There was only four of us.
There was only 4 of you,
Yeah.
I was
basically.
there.
Yeah, us three, and
And that was when Rayleigh decided to go on his the second part of his epic quest to find the poisonous kid.
no, before that though, was
When you scam some money from the rest of us.
yes. So we got given the loot.
Yep.
Right after the tournament, we were in a room recovering whatnot. Those that weren't present were in hospital recovering or passed out because they were exhausted.
So we were given the party's winnings, which we then had to pay off two of the high rollers, I'm going to call them, because they were basically threatening to murder us in the street if we did not do so. So
One of
easy
them
to
was
pay them off.
Anne Ross Morven.
And then a certain jumpy little rogue decided to startle the fire mage, which started the first inter-party fight.
That's right. we
Code
did have to
Braun was
stop it.
the.
He went to stab me, I went to fireball him.
Oh yeah, because.
Oh, do you want to hear my
So that
notes?
means there's been 3 inter-party fights, all involving
Rayleigh. Yes.
Yeah.
What
So
what
then
trade that was?
we tested the first smoke grenade.
Ah,
They
that's
were trying to
right.
attack each other. Okay.
That's right. Now I remember. You guys were still in the back room in the arena, and
Yeah.
that's right. And then all 3 of the people who'd come along to basically say good or bad, and I'm okay with everything as long as you pay me out this much.
To be fair, Nick, that one was my fault.
That
The
one
second
was
one-
entirely his
The
fault.
second one
Was
when I
also your fault.
The second one when I shot the crow,
That was your fault.
I had reasons for doing that.
Was
They
your
were
fault, though?
paranoid, ridiculous reasons, but it was less of you pissed me off, so now I'm going to kill you. It was more we're under a serious risk. I'm keeping the party out of danger by killing a possible spy. Little did I know it wasn't really a spy, but a friend of Rowan's.
We'll get to that as well.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
And the last one wasn't my fault at all. Everyone was fighting, and I'm like,
So yeah, you guys got into a fight in that room. So you're in that back room. It didn't even be.
The last one was euthanasia without consent.
yeah.
I believe they call that genocide.
All right, you guys are getting way distracted and making the story very hard to understand. All right.
So,
you guys
we're in the back room.
You're in the back room. I can't remember when the fight happened exactly. I think you did get paid.
Yeah, we got paid.
paid.
We'd already spoken to the
paid
gentleman.
someone 500 gold because they were a powerful sorcerer. They were pissed off because they were like, you cheated and we lost money. We're like, yeah, cool, just get out of here, have some money. We earned like
You got $5,000.
5,000 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we owed 5,000, but we gave one 500 and we gave the other one I think 700, and we decided we'd just tell the party that we ended up giving them
1,000
1,000
or
total.
something.
So we kept the 300 and divided it amongst ourselves, and then gave the rest of the party the
The
rest
second
of
guy only asked for 200, so it became 700 overall.
Yeah, so we kept the 300.
But there was a good reason for that, because that sorcerer was clearly a high-level illusionist
Yeah.
to create something that skilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a very powerful. So we're like, we're not gonna cross this bitch.
And then
Somewhere in town.
then we attacked each other. Then she used a smoke bomb, which stunned out the
Okay,
whole room.
so my
basically.
character was like, fuck, how do I de-escalate this situation? She panicked and went, smoke bomb! right in between them because they were like here and she's like here and it's like, oh shit, no!
Like, totally.
Like totally. Anyway.
Oh my god, it was so effective.
It was very
It
effective.
was very effective.
It smoked them out. They calmed down. They're like, what the fuck, Amber? And like, yeah.
To interrupt with a complete tangent, for the people who are watching the stream, can you put a message if you'd like to see us run a once-off game of Dragonborn Power Rangers? Everyone has to be a different colour.
Yes,
Oh.
I want
I
that.
like that idea.
I want
I
this.
like that idea.
We discussed it a while
It's
back.
a fantastic game mode.
All right, so
Breath weapons combined.
after that, everyone kind of calmed down. We sorted things out a little bit, and then Rayleigh went off on his own to try and
The Megazord can be
Find-
Bahamut.
Stop getting distracted.
went off to find a poisoner's kit and went around to all the alchemists and the shops and everything.
Yeah, so getting the poisoner's kit, I think you went through like 3 different places before you finally get to the last place. And it was all just based on just rolls and role playing. Role playing was great, but the rolls just weren't going in your favour, and you were just going from place to place to place to place.
Being very
Essentially
open about it too.
Being very open about trying to find this poisoner's kit.
It's for rats.
You finally come up to like the very last place you could possibly go to get this poisonous kit. And you get to that location and you start talking to the woman behind the desk.
Yeah, she was interesting.
Yeah.
I was looking for a different alchemist too at this
Yeah,
point.
at
I think
this
the
point
alchemist
we'd set-
closed,
Doesn't matter. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
at this point we had separated, so it was Yolan and
Yes, it was Yolan and Raleigh just looking at
but
this
we
one.
joined at the end of that
Yeah.
because we were looking for the alchemist.
And you two had basically, as you started talking to this particular person, you were starting to notice a few things that was a bit off, a bit wrong. And one of the main things you noticed was the black infection, just a small amount that you could see, but just enough coming up through the veins, through the neck. And that's when you realised, holy shit, something's going on here. We need to do something about it. Then you realised that the druid, she was trying to, I think she realised that you noticed. And she was like, I'm
Did you point it
closing up
Yeah,
now.
because I asked her if she was okay. Do you need help? It's like, no, I'm closing, and pushes out the
Yeah.
door.
So you guys were pushed out the door as much
No,
as
no,
you,
'cause
not
I-
pushed out physically, but like
I tried to go, no, we're going to help you, and then she like screamed at us to leave, and then turned invisible.
Yeah.
And we both sort of went, nope, ran out the door.
that's right. She turned invisible. That's right.
It's like, yeah, nope. If she can do that, we don't want to be messing with this.
She can do that. She's at least 5th level, I think.
Also, if
No,
you can
second
do
level
that,
spell.
let's get some backup.
Yeah.
That was a 5th level spell.
Great
You guys don't worry about it, guys. You guys are making many assumptions at this stage. You're making rules assumptions
Yes, we are.
instead of worrying about the fact that the GM just made up shit just to make it entertaining.
Yeah. I just said, she's invisible. We don't want to be fighting this. Let's book it.
So
And
you
then-
guys went back to your tavern, and then you gathered the rest of the party to figure out what you want to do next. And then the rest of the party showed up,
And then?
and then
Well, they told us
You
about it,
said
and we
that
just
one
we
more
just listened and
time.
went, oh, that's interesting. Let's go back there.
What an odd person.
So we went back there, and there were suddenly guards there, who did not take
you
kindly
apparently
to us
got
offering to help them.
I just saw that.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, so yes, they decided to come back and see what else was going on. When they came back, there was a couple of guards sitting at the front of the door, and Rayleigh had gone around to the back of the house and looked in the window to see what was going on. To see that the same person that they were talking to earlier was in the back room and organising a whole heap of people to start carrying stuff out of the back room. Now, this is only a few hours had passed when this had happened, so obviously something had gone. They spooked them, I think, is probably the best way of putting it. And they started to leave. And you guys decided that you needed to intercept it and see what the fuck was going on. And you realised, I think Rayleigh did notice that there were zombies in the back.
Yep.
And from that, you've just gone to the assumption that something bad's going on and you have to deal with the problem.
Yep.
A big combat ensued.
Well, I think that was the end of the session.
Yes, it was the end
Because
of the
the
session.
next session was when we were all back again.
Correct.
Yes.
And we paid you.
No, it was like, because I think the two of us were just like literally walking down the
Yeah,
street
walking
going,
down the street.
where's everyone else?
Yeah. Fine. And it was me going, and then you attach all the cars together, and you have a giant man.
It's sort of a wagon centipede.
Yeah.
This is Rowan's wonderful. I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
I can't see it because
Yep.
of the delay.
Wonderful
It's
design.
on your computer though, so
Yeah,
I
we
just
should
can't
aim
see
it
it
kind
from
of.
here.
How about I take it and I go like this because I've got the one in front of me.
Yeah.
It is the
And the people
boat
at home don't have to see.
centipede wagon.
We need to build it one day.
There are plans. There are plans.
there are many plans.
what
In
you have
Rowan's
it written
head.
down?
I mean, Rowan's head.
In character?
Yeah.
No, it's all in his head currently.
Okay. Because if you write it down, so that way, if you ever, God forbid, die and turn into a pile of ash, your next character can be an engineer.
This part of the game, I was late to the next session, so for some reason, while everyone else got into a fight, Yolan just sort of sat in the corner and went, "Oh, that's interesting."
Oh, I remember exactly. I remember exactly why Amber got in the fight. Imperious
You
and
talk to someone.
Amber. Yes, we went to talk to the guards that were standing outside the alchemy shop, and they didn't like our questioning, and they attacked Imperious, and he fainted. And that made Amber very, very mad, so she went on a mad rampage to murder them
I
both.
literally stepped forward going, I'll cure you if you're there. Yeah, that didn't work out well for me at all.
You
So
managed
she
to get
literally
back up
murdered
into
the
the fight.
shit
I
out
got back up really quickly, but
I
it
healed
was,
you.
Yeah, it was literally just before I was about to say, I'm going to prepare a spell if they attack. You've gone, they stab you. I'm like, oh, well, never mind, I'm going down.
And then he went up.
Yeah. And then,
So then the next week happened basically, and we jumped into the combat, of which it mostly consisted of you guys dealing with the fire elemental that she'd summoned.
Jeez.
The first thing in the whole game that actually did real damage to me too.
That did not
Didn't he try
help
to
my
throw
fight.
something in the window?
Sorry?
Didn't he try to
I tried to
something in the
throw
window and it bounced back?
One of the smoke grenades.
You rolled a 1 on your attack roll. He tried to throw a smoke bomb into the back room.
Because I made more.
He rolled a 1.
But none of us saw that, so we didn't know that he fucked up.
Yeah.
But I didn't, see?
then
That's right. It bounced off the window frame and came back into the alleyway.
I flew off.
It's all good. It wasn't one of my grenades. It was just smoke, so it's all good.
I mean,
flew
your
off
poison
over the
acid
rooftop.
grenade gunpowder shot.
So more combat happened. They were busy dealing with the fire elemental because it was actually quite tough. And in the process of them dealing with the fire elemental,
I think myself and
shopkeeper-
Rayleigh ended up getting on the roof.
yes.
I went on the roof to escape the fire elemental.
And I went on the
started
roof because
hitting-
I followed you.
And being airborne is good if there's a massive fire
Yes,
monster.
and then
attacking you.
Did you
then I
change
sprouted
into
my
a
wings.
horse?
I did not change into a
In
horse.
fact,
not
I
this
think
one.
that's how we
Okay, I
made
thought
up
you
of our
changed it to
earlier
seven.
fight. In that,
I
Yeah,
summoned
yeah,
it.
we helped each
You
other.
went-
Alright, well,
Okay.
guys, you're talking over each other again.
Yes.
Alright, so, as I said, the fight was continuing. They were doing with the fire elemental. You flew up into the air and you saw her leave the back in the back alley with all of the zombies, and they were carrying a crate. And this is a good example of when you should actually pay attention to rules, because you twin casted a
Yes.
fireball, which you can't do.
do.
But I wasn't really paying attention to it all that much, and I really didn't care all that much because even one fireball would have been enough.
Yeah.
What?
Everything went up in flames. Everything.
Make the PC burn all sorts
So
of points.
basically, they fireballed all of the zombies to death,
And all of our loot.
and all of the loot and the evidence.
Yeah.
What actually happened, and Tim is just part of like the big media conspiracy.
Yeah.
We stopped that evil druid alchemist from burning down the town.
We,
You actually did.
Yeah.
By just randomly looking for a poisonous kit, tripped over a plot, and then essentially stopped the whole town from being poisoned.
which is the official statement. We didn't murder,
Oh, yes.
pillage,
And
and
then
loot
the druid
everything.
turned around and decided to snipe me out of the sky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that hurt a lot. I am very much a glass cannon.
And
I do
that's-
a lot of damage but have very little health.
But that's when I saved you, because
Yeah.
I managed to get you up with a
Yeah.
healer's potion, otherwise you would have been cactus.
No, you stabilized me with your medicine skill, I believe.
And I remember while everyone else
Really? Because I don't have medicine.
Yeah, you just rolled good and put your finger in where you thought it was bleeding.
Yeah, you put a finger in a hole.
Man, what's seems to be pouring out of that?
If I put a knife here, it kills him. Maybe if I put a finger here.
I will,
The brave Dutch boy putting a finger in a dike.
I will point out that
It's a story.
It is a story.
I know the story. I know the
you
story.
tried to use your medicine skill quite a bit during that session for the purpose of like gathering evidence with like varying degrees of
That
success.
wasn't medicine skill. That was more just.
That was
I
medicine
wonder
skill.
if I can hack this up.
You were trying to cut someone's flesh off to maintain
Yeah.
the
He wanted to
sample.
get a tattoo.
Is that a medicine skill or is that like?
Anyway, don't remember what rules it is because you guys after it, the only evidence you managed to get was the
I went
two
survival with that.
the two guards at the front. You decided to skin a little bit because you found that they had tattoos on them of a particular symbol.
Although we did end up donating that to science because we're good people.
That's
We-
true.
I currently still have it actually. Like,
No,
We
you
got
gave
two
it
of
away.
them. No,
I asked for it back before we left.
He did.
the
I do remember
room,
him doing
'cause,
that.
like,
I do remember him doing that.
I'm
You
a bit
stole
blind.
from science?
I am science. A freak of science.
I do remember.
Scientists don't normally use themselves to shit on fields for.
I mean, don't they?
Anyway, so you guys,
They outsource
after
the
you
students for that.
after you've realised that
shit in the woods.
after you guys have investigated the area, you also managed to find notes about them being bankrolled by Musuon. It wasn't specific in any particular way. It's just that was the only link that you managed to find.
I just remember. I
So it
pillaged
didn't
the
have
place.
Baron crossed out Earl crossed out High King.
Oh dear.
This was before hiking anyway,
Yeah.
so it would have just been barren.
For anyone who doesn't know, that was a reference to our LARP. Our quest just passed. The Baron of Muselin got changed to the Counter Muselin because there was too many barons, and then he got elected to be the High King through a quest thing that happened.
he collected all the crown pieces.
So that's that joke there for anyone who doesn't understand.
It's not Wednesday though, so it's not his birthday.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Didn't we also like try and pursue someone through the sewers?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
This is when you
Yeah,
decided to turn into one of the best ways to pursue them through the sewers and track them was you just turn into a wolf, and that way you could track them. And then we
And
went
it-
into the next session.
Which led into some very interesting communication as you'd kind of nod. Or,
Yeah, at this
It's
point,
about
I was essentially his handler because no one else in the group understood his character. We're like, this druid's a bit weird. Do we kill him or do we not? And my character's, no, he's okay. He's my friend. Don't kill him. He's fine. Look, we'll just trust him and everything will be okay,
Sorry,
right?
pissed on your leg. Actually, at some stage, I'm sure you're going to do that.
yes.
You probably piss on Yolan's leg. He's the most tree-like looking one.
Oh, we can call that Ignatius P.
At that point, the druid dies.
Very disrespectful, but hilarious.
Another one becomes the dust.
Oh my character's to die.
So anyway, you guys decide to track him through the sewers. Not all of you guys went in the sewers. Some of you decided that you were just too precious for it and decided to walk up top. Which then you managed to find yourselves in the warehouse district of Gdansk after a while.
Where I threateningly hugged someone.
Stop skipping ahead.
Sorry, I got excited.
But before that,
But before that,
It was dirty.
So you're probably wondering, why did she threateningly hug someone?
Yes,
well, you
exactly
see,
right.
dwarves don't smell. Well, okay, my dwarf
So
particularly.
they were walking. Oh,
Doesn't
let me
smell
get
the
into it.
sewers.
They were walking through that part of the world because the trail had ended in the sewers. So they came out and started just walking around to try and see if they could pick up the scent again or the trail or something like that, which I think you did manage to do.
I asked the rats if somebody had been.
That's
through
right.
there.
You asked the rats. That's right. Yeah.
Who led us
And
astray.
I think the druid had convinced some of them to lie for her.
Yes.
So I had to get out of him.
Oh yes, you had to do an opposed deceit check against like dumb animals.
I just cast animal friendship and it was great.
Halfway through all of this, you managed to notice that someone was following you. Was you? Yeah, they were following you. Were they following you?
yeah,
He came up and someone was watching the manhole.
That's right. Someone was watching the manhole. Then you noticed once he
Yeah.
noticed you in the manhole, he started walking off, and you guys managed to notice him in time. He noticed that you guys noticed him, and he started running.
Yep.
And you guys went for a bit of a chase scene to try
Bit of a
and get him.
combat hug.
Bit of a combat hug.
and that was when
And then I had an
first
intimidating hug.
first had become the game before that was when I first hit my first inquisitive rogue levels, so I got the perception check to find a little alleyway and made a bolus out of climbing pittons and rope, and it was shoddily made, but I got a damn near perfect throw when he rounded the corner and wrapped around his neck or something.
So just so you know about that particular one, because if you remember that one, how it went is that he tried to get the two pittons, which is essentially the iron spikes, and tie them together and just basically throw them at the guy to try and trip him.
While he was running, I believe.
Sorry?
While he was running.
While he was running. So in my brain, as soon as he's telling me this particular plan, I've just gone, this sounds implausible. So I do what I normally, because I can't remember if you rolled the roll or I did the roll. So I do what I do normally. I roll in the background and see what happens. I rolled a 20. So a bit of a laugh, I said, you throw it into the air as you're going by. And the two parts of the piton come out of your rope and fly off in different directions. However, one of them goes in the direction of the guy and clods him square in the head. And knocks him out, or knocks him sprawling across the ground, so he trips over and goes prone, which gave you the chance to all sort of catch up to him.
Yeah, so I lunged and attempted to cut out his Achilles heel, so he wouldn't be running any further.
That's right.
But my strength was not good enough, so he threw me off, and that's when Amber caught up and tackled him.
No,
Yes.
no, I just gave him an aggressive
Didn't
hug.
you come around like another corner and just did like this flying tackle type thing? Or was that you doing the flying tackle?
No, when he came around the corner, I threw the pitten. Knocked
then
him
my
sprawling while they
character
were chasing.
She did a great feat of acrobatics though, because I
That's
believe
right,
she
yeah.
rolled extremely
She rolled
high.
extremely well.
did.
And just
And you guys have come around the corner and you've seen this guy just suddenly come around the corner from the other direction and then see Amber come out and just go...
Yeah, you don't want to hear the right train.
like a...
Oh, something we forgot to mention, by the way.
Are you distracting again?
No, Amber is a bearded dwarf, a female
yes.
bearded dwarf. I just wanted to put that visual out there.
And
for
the running joke is that the beard
Where's
is
your
so
picture?
big we don't know if she's actually wearing a top at all.
Yeah,
we're not sure.
Nobody except now Rowan knows what is under that beard. Which sounds so dodgy now that I say that out loud. They're just really good friends.
He's not saying a word.
Not until he gets to therapy.
So anyway,
Humans are so weird.
You mean dwarves?
so they had a talk with this particular gentleman. A few threats were thrown around, of course, and then from that they learnt that the druid had left on the Black Falcon.
No, we agreed to let him go safely.
Yes, that's right.
yes.
Well, some of the party agreed to let him go safely. We got the information, and then half the party tried to kill him.
Yeah. Yes.
But he got away.
But he managed to get away.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
Self-destructed. We ran.
Yes. No,
we
you're
got
right.
around the corner and
he's
there was
right.
blood stain everywhere.
Yeah. But he got away from us.
He committed suicide somehow.
That's right.
Next time.
I was going to say,
Go-
we'll
go
get
have
to the
the bloody
grooming of the
idea.
beard later. There
Get
is
the
a grooming.
Yeah.
So yes, they managed to get the information out of him that he'd left on the Black Falcon, and you guys then went into the notion of trying to look up this particular ship. Now
It was a ship.
in Gdansk,
We automatically thought it was a smuggling ship like the Millennium Falcon.
correct. So you guys looked. You went to the harbour master here. Like when we're talking harbour master here, we're talking more barges than anything else because it's only a river going through here, not a major shipping port or anything like that. So most of the barges that come here go down the river and then head into the port of Wormia and then unload onto the actual bigger sea vessels. So from here, they're just looking at a whole heap of barges, and a lot of them are common names, and they're trying to find the name that represented the information that they got. And they were coming up with dead ends and couldn't quite find out what was going on until someone cottoned on that it was a druid and that Black Falcon was literal.
And our
Yeah.
druid went, oh yeah. And I should have thought of that.
And then went, oh my god, if they can turn into a flying creature, they must be really powerful.
So after that, they
And
decided
also,
that...
why didn't they just fly away from when we were like, try to stop them from burning down the town?
Because she was
Plot
looking
reasons.
after the crate that the undead were carrying.
She did a good job of that.
Ow.
Well, admittedly, she's only failed doing that once.
So after that, you decided that, well, you needed to follow this up a bit more. And that's when you decided, with the information that you had, to go to Eris. So you decided to hop on a ship
And go to Eris.
and go to Eris, basically. Now, it was going to be a long, long trip.
Long.
But luckily, the captain is a very special individual.
Ha-ha!
Spiffing!
Spiffing!
Pose.
Jolly good, sir.
He's got premature arthritis of the spine from puffing his chest out.
And his wrist don't flex as well.
Also,
That's right, yeah.
Also, before we left, Rowan got drunk and used druidcraft to make people smell like skunks. And
Oh,
that
no,
was
no,
hilarious,
more specifically, Amber and Rowan decided that the pub was boring.
Because it was all collegium students.
Yeah, that's right. It was like,
That's right.
Oh, that's where you got bitten by something.
But it's also where I stole
Bye,
the
familiar.
note that had the markings of the star patterns.
and we were sitting
Yeah,
outside, and I was keeping Rowan company because we were like, well, these are just kids, whatever. They're not going to get all that fun drunk. So I'm sitting with Rowan, and I'm like, you want some of my alcohol? Because, of course, Amber always has alcohol on her. And she got him drunk, and they were sitting and giggling for hours.
He was a bit of a lightweight.
Well, yes. Well, he put skunk spells on everyone.
yeah, like as a feature of the cantrip druidcraft, you can produce like senses of nature, like a gust of wind or petals. And the example is for a smell is the smell of a skunk. So I went, okay, skunk.
And it was hilarious. They were just pissing themselves laughing. It was a good time.
It was a
Coined
good time.
Good time.
a new teenage pastime.
No, I think
Skunking.
the key moment that you guys enjoyed the most when you've seen these two lovely couple, well, obviously they're newly in love, walk down the street. They're sort of like giggling to each other and walking along. Then all of a sudden, the girl smells this skunk smell, and she's like, and he's like horrified.
Like, oh no, is that me?
Is that me?
So you
That
were,
was the highlight of the
you
night.
were the equivalent of two teenagers chroming in the park.
So,
Anyway, that was your segue, sideways thing, whatever you want to call it.
hey, it was a real bonding moment for Rowan and Amber.
That's true.
It was a real bonding moment.
And yeah, that was where Rayleigh stole the
And his hangover was also a good
magic
bonding
paper,
moment.
which had the star chart on it.
Yes.
On there.
Oh,
That actually is a very important thing because before you went on the ship, you managed to went through the collegium again because it is a very important little clue about another plot. Where you started talking to a class, because I'm having a class in the
We
collegium.
did mention that a bit earlier.
Yeah, but we'll go through it a little bit better. You would go through the collegium and you started talking to a class that was going on. And they had a whole heap of instruments and they were looking at the sun. So the idea was that they were using these particular instruments to record the sun, for lack of a better way of putting it.
The mana radiation.
The radiation and stuff like that, yeah. And they could do this onto particular bits of paper, and that paper would flow through the different colours as the spectrum of light changed as the sun set. Which was just a very basic thing for collegium students to do. However, after talking to one of the students, that student's bit of paper had something different to it than the rest of them did. Which was, at the point that the sunlight was turning into the reds as it was getting lower and lower, there was this single yellow line going directly down. And through the conversation talking to him, we found out that it was this weird shooting star that seemed to have gone through the process of being recorded at the same time. What made it interesting and unique was the fact that as a shooting star, you would expect it to go at an angle and probably not be so prominent. But this particular yellow line went directly down, followed the sun's path essentially, and continued on for pretty much most of the paper through the red. Like you didn't see it in the yellow section, but you could see it as it was going through the red. And that piqued your curiosity, which Rayleigh then stole that bit of paper afterwards to utilise and give it to you so you can use it as evidence and look into it further later.
Making friends after stabbing.
Essentially.
Another note of what happened before we got on the ship and left Gdansk
Oh, mate.
was we were at at the Gilded Lodge again, I think, the tavern, and our druid friend here got into another argument.
Hang on, let's explain this.
No.
The Warlock was sitting at the table. and he was
it goes back even further than that.
Well, at first,
I asked a bird if they'd seen like a black falcon in the sky. And this bird was surprisingly knowledgeable, probably because the DM wanted to encourage us to leave this town. And I was all like, oh, yes, there
went
was.
west.
He went that way. And I was like, oh boy, he's so useful. He's my new friend. Then, cut to the evening.
the warlock is sitting there and he's saying, well, the druid could be watching us from anywhere. All animals are a threat. Quote.
The most paranoid character in the entire game.
So paranoia suddenly kicks into overdrive. Oh my god, all animals are a threat. Open tavern door. Look outside. There is that crow sitting across the street. Alright, bow, bang.
Innocently looking for another snack from the humans who are now friends.
Yeah,
Next second,
puff of arrow, puff of feathers.
You're all a natural 20 or something.
he
Wanted it.
Yes. The next second, you hear like the slam of a tankard down on the table as Rowan erupts into a horse in the middle of the tavern.
It's got to be important because Rowan doesn't have that many forms he can transform into yet because he hasn't seen that many animals. So the war horse was the only one that had any particular combat.
He's his strongest form.
Yeah,
the horse.
still paranoid, having heard that all animals are a threat, and suddenly confronted by a warhorse in the middle of a tavern after shooting a bird.
A high class tavern as well.
Immediately
Yeah,
turned
it's a
around
shit
and
place.
shot the horse in the face.
Pointy and toity with a horse in the middle.
Toitiest of toities.
Injured horse that has been shot in the face. That
Rears
is
up and-
actually Rowan.
Rears up and kicks you directly in the face.
At which then Yorlan kicks in and goes, holy fuck, what the fuck's going on? Comes over,
Just punches the horse right in the face, and then poof! There's a half elf.
He does so much damage when you punch him in the face, and he turns back into the half elf. So you literally slap the horse out of the half elf.
Oh, yes.
And then I
Half
say,
elf of the horse.
I do remember.
Which is a funny
To stop people from freaking out. Immediately.
Goes, and thank you for watching our rendition of the
That's right, you
Battle
did
of
something.
Sub-Zero.
You did a good
We are
perception.
performers traveling through this.
And you did this massive perception roll, so I'm like,
It was so much fun.
oh no, that wasn't the first time that happened either.
It wasn't the first, and it also was not the last.
Sorry, that was the first time, but it wasn't the last. That's right. Yeah.
Though I managed to like mend bridges with Rayleigh by
That's right, yeah.
us traveling in between towns. He assembled a poisonous kit, which was just a basket full of mildly irritating road plants.
Actually, there was something in it that we forgot that we didn't actually roll for that was actually useful, that we should have spoken about. There was something in it that we decided was useful.
Yeah, whatever. We'll
So
do that.
Mushrooms that'll give you the shits. That is useful.
Mushrooms that are diuretic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
done.
If you need to get a guard away from their guard post, that is a
I'll
perfect
say 2 uses of laxatives.
Yeah, stool toes. That's fantastic.
If I use one of them, can I get advantage when I need to speak shit?
Oh no. Well, we've got enough bullshit for the more smoke potions now.
Oh, smoke potions that when you breathe it in makes you.
Laxative smoke bombs!
This is my character specialty here.
Alright. So after
And
all
they'll all
that,
be alcoholic as well, so they'll be well disguised.
I'll build you a mortar. Lob it into them.
What a smoke laxative.
No, a mortar that fires pistols.
it's just smoke, sir. Yeah, but I'm not feeling very good today.
Look, it gives it
And with the
a
smallest
now
amount
my
of
new
pressure, the
favourite.
world fell out.
It gives a whole new meaning to blowing smoke up your ass.
Yep.
Stool toads.
Okay.
I love it.
We're getting sidetracked again. Let's barrel back on path.
I'm actually going to, thank you, Romney. I'm going to cross out mushrooms and write stool toads.
Stool toads.
That does.
Oh, that's right.
They're
Yeah.
not the sort of ones that you lick to get high, right?
That does remind me of
That's
that
wrong.
particular joke.
No,
What are the?
Go on, Tim.
Well, I can't remember the full joke now. What did the constipated accountant?
No,
Did
did you
I-
hear about the
that's-
constipated accountant whose calculator broke? Yeah, he worked it out with a pencil.
Mm.
So, oh,
Yeah, he's a so.
oh, God, I hate you. It's,
Alright.
it's not my joke.
Back on
See,
track. Back on
I
track.
don't think that fight was entirely my fault.
No,
Entirely.
I feel like a lot of fights are instigated by the drill.
Yeah, and then he blamed Warlock, and then he blamed everyone else.
So, Amir's sitting there the whole time just going, yeah, die, dance for me, puppets.
I take very good care of my staff. I mean, friends.
No. Look, he starts a
I
fight and then he
feed you,
convinces
I
everyone
water
that he's
you
right
occasionally.
for
I
it,
feed
and then he
myself.
gets-
I have good berries.
Next time
Oh
I
yes,
we should
a
do the
running
drink.
thing. A running thing that's been going on too is that he would summon his good berries and then chuck it into her ale.
Yeah.
It comes up later on in the stream about it fermenting in there for a good few months.
Since the day they met, once a day they'd put whatever good berries they didn't use into just this little barrel of ale, and they were like, "Well, just chuck it in there because it'll ferment, right?"
Ale.
This little barrel of fruity vinegar.
Yeah, pretty much.
Floor cleaner, I think.
That comes up
So,
like...
That comes up later.
But that's what they've been doing just as an experiment.
Well, if you drink it, it'll clean your stool toad out.
Just
Could that actually be
we love you guys because you're giving us more in jokes. They're just gonna keep coming back.
that needs to be an antidote to stool toads now.
What a
Cork. A good berry cork.
No, it's a suppository.
I'm happy avoiding. No. A portable hole connected to the roof above your enemy's bed.
Alright, stop. We're gonna move on.
It's quite warm in here now.
We've got to move on, folks. We're going to move on. We're running out of time.
But Romney did love that.
Do we have any coke? Regular coke. I don't
No.
Alright, guys, calm. We're going to move on. Alright, so you guys get on a ship. The ship, of course, being captained by Frederick. And as the Frederick is, jolly good show, chaps. It's always about putting on the pose. What's the ship called? The Ishmael.
That's right.
And the first mate Jonas, who thinks he's fucking captain, is an idiot.
Well, he's right.
It's called the Ishmael because I was making a whole bunch of Moby Dick references.
Yeah, Moby Dick references. Yes, they have hopped on a ship. They travel in the ship for a while.
That's too bad a joke even for me to say.
How about the wagon?
There we go.
It hasn't been built yet.
That one.
The wagon needs to be...
Yeah,
The wagon.
haven't built the wagon
Haven't
yet.
built the wagon.
It
It's
is an
a-
idea in Rowan's head that he has yet to convince anyone is a good one to build.
He's no, it's a good one to build. We just don't want to have the resources at the moment.
We've spoken about
We also decided that since we needed to travel across a large body of water, that maybe we'd build it when we got to the other side. So it's a future plan.
Oh look, I'm looking
It
forward
will
to that
happen.
wagon. It will happen unless he dies.
It's not big enough to cross open water.
Not yet.
No, it is being.
Stop giving them ideas.
That's only because you haven't made it submersible.
This is the Coke Zero version.
That'll do.
Pass it.
It's not good, but it'll do.
Come on, submarine!
All right, guys, come on. We're running out of time.
Yeah.
Running out of
Yes.
time.
Come on, guys.
All right. So you hop on the ship. I've said this like 15 times now. I'm pretty sure.
And now my favourite part comes up. To abate the boredom.
Oh,
The border was
you
hilarious.
mean when I run a scam and it takes up half the session?
That episode. I've got to find out what. I can't remember what episode that is because that's a fantastic
So,
episode.
for the record, at this point, Rayleigh is falling pretty heavy into the depths of psychosis. He's
Yeah.
really starting to lose
And
it.
it's
He's
important.
not trusting friends anymore because he's been attacked by two of them, or at least in brawls with two of them. He's been threatened by the warlock. We're not in a good way mentally as far as we're going. So we're all bored on the ship, and the warlock decides, I know how to scam some money out of Rayleigh. And we've just gone up another level, so he's unlocked some new spells, and he goes, all right, first one to the top of the mast, 20 gold pieces. And I go, Well,
This is from someone who couldn't climb over a rail to fall into an arena.
yeah.
Not just once, mind you. This actually happened more than once that he hadn't been able to climb over a railing.
Let me explain their particular race, how it's supposed to go. So they're on a ship. It's a 3-masted ship, and it has many sails on it. So the idea was that instead of just going straight up the mast, that they would start on the outside, climb up to the very first cross piece, run across the first cross piece, and then go up the mast, and then run to the next across the next cross piece to the very end, and that represented the race.
But here's the thing: as more people, including Rowan, are expressing interest in taking part in the race, you start to impose conditions.
Yes, as soon as the asthma goes, I'll join in. No flying.
As soon as I want to join in, you say no animals.
Yeah.
At no point.
But at no point did I say no spells.
Yeah.
'Cause
Or no magic.
I had just picked up Spider Climb and hadn't told anyone.
And
Also,
mind you-
because I had never cast it in game, so I wanted to.
Yeah,
And the whole party forgot that I have the ring of jumping still.
yeah, and
Yes.
meanwhile, I'm looking at my +7 acrobatics and going, 20 gold pieces is mine. This is.
Oh, the
and
best
there
part
was
is
a-
I nearly lost.
Yeah, I know.
There was a whole bunch of bets going on around the ship too, so the crew just as bored as the rest of us.
Wait, didn't one of the crew shoot someone?
Yeah, sure.
We'll get to
All right,
that.
guys,
We'll get to
let's
that.
not go into that particular episode too much because the whole thing would be ruined if we tried to explain it
The
too much.
point is, it is the single best thing that's ever happened.
We'll
I'm just
try and
saying-
find a link for that particular episode and put it up because
We still got to re-upload the videos.
yeah, because that was
Yeah.
fantastic.
It might have just been on one of the early YouTube ones.
Um,
I'm not sure.
I've got it on my computer. I've just
Yeah.
got to get it.
That
part
was the
there.
one where I made a faux pas at the start, so we might want to cut that.
No, you
So
made
go-
that. You made that
Yeah.
afterwards.
Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
guys, just I will be going through and hopefully editing all of the old episodes and re-uploading them so it doesn't have any like long
Oh,
pauses,
actually,
any
you're
breaks,
right. It
stuff
was
like
my
that.
second. It was
And we'll be uploading those again at some point, but so we'll make sure we let you guys know about that and keep you updated.
Yeah. Well, I think we may even because that's not the whole episode. We might cut that part out and just present that because it was a fantastic
But
thing.
some of the crew got personally invested as well on the outcome,
Yeah.
and
And,
they had a nice
nothing-
fun competition.
Absolutely nothing went to plan.
Nothing.
So I'm not going to tell you who won either. You have to go watch that episode.
Can
So-
I say what happened?
No.
How does someone get informed if they want to know when those things are uploaded? What's the best Facebook group they should be part of?
Yeah, so there is a Salty Dragon Tavern Facebook page now, which you can
Which
like
Tim will-
and join, and we will be keeping all of our updates there. That's where all our announcements will go as well. So do stay tuned.
And we
I
might
think that's where I
occasionally
got
ask
half
for-
of these people coming. There's a whole heap of new people in the channel now. So
Yeah.
Romney, because I just went, I should just invite some of my friends, and I went, screw this, just invite all of them. It's like, have I got 1,000 friends? Holy shit!
One of the things
That's
I was
messed
planning
up.
on doing was having for my character randomly getting crowdsourcing decisions just for fun and randomness.
We do have
So
plans.
are we putting things up in that group saying, do you think Amir should do this or that? And then working on who.
We actually have a whole bunch of audience-involved
Yeah.
plans for the future, and they will all most likely be run through that Facebook page. So even if you can't come watch the stream, you can support us through the Facebook page and join in on that.
Beautiful. Nice pitch.
Also, suggestions for the caterpillar boat.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
We've already had ideas for including weapons such as ballistas and trebuchets.
It needs a Gauss cannon, damn it. Let's just go all out and just get a
You're
bloody
missing the important part.
railgun.
What's its name?
Yes, the name is a very important
Yes.
part.
Railgun!
Queen Rowan the Two.
Yes, we can set up a villager railgun on it.
So anyway, they got.
It actually shoots villages.
Let's move on to the next part because that episode almost is entirely of
It's a
that particular
3.5,
thing and a few bits.
Can we
and
talk about
pieces.
the ants?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to the ants.
Yes. Okay. So
We
we
get to
had
the
to
ants.
stop off.
Let me do it.
Okay.
Let me start, and then you guys can interject. So part of their ship was to part of their trip was to stop off into a place called Eastcliff,
Which is where the map is stuck currently.
which is where the map is stuck currently. Yes.
I will update
We have an
those
update.
updates.
Stop interrupting me!
Sorry.
Oh, I worked out how to do the Indiana Jones red line sort of going across the map thing as well.
Okay.
Okay,
good.
sweet. Oh, that'd be good.
Fill me in.
So they go to a place called Eastcliff, and it was basically designed in such a way just to get some supplies for the ship so they're not running out. The idea behind Eastcliff, there was two parts to the town. So there was the Dover Cliffs, and the village itself was up on top of the cliffs, and the port itself was actually on the beach along the bottom. And so while it was the one place, there was a bit of separation between the two. So, and the cliffs were quite high, so they either had a really long stairway to get up, which is where most of the public would go, or the quicker way, which was a few various methods, one of them being a pulley system escalator, and the other one being essentially...
You mean elevator?
Elevator, sorry, yes. And the other one being base jumping if you wanted to go from the village down to the beach. So there's a few different methodologies of getting up and down. In there, going to the tavern and just having a few drinks and stuff like that, they managed to meet up with a woman who'd found a tunnel system going down the cliffs. And she theorised that with this particular tunnel system, she could set up another alternative way up and down the cliff.
Imperius was rather taken by her as well.
And yes, Imperius was rather taken by her.
No, wingman.
So a bit of awkward.
He was the awkward nerd meets the awkward nerd.
Yeah, pretty much.
I will point out that I think for the session where the party arrived in Eastcliff and went to investigate this particular tunnel network, the two of us weren't present.
Yes.
No, you two were not present.
Yeah, which meant the only other high charisma character was myself.
Yes, that's right. That's why.
The antisocial bookworm who does not like talking to people suddenly had to talk to people.
And are you charming?
Apparently I was. I scored.
Take one for the team. Oh, good.
Yes, that's the winter score.
And so in doing that, they talked to her. They found out about this, and they got sent.
You're not a horse.
They got sent to they got sent to the tunnels to have a look down.
Mysterious woman wants tunnel explored.
You know the worst thing? The last team of people who went in there all died.
No, I think it was two guys.
I was a bit more concerned about the other inhabitants as well.
That's great.
Beautiful.
Thank you, EJ Black Dove.
I'm loving our viewers at the moment because they're breaking us. It's
Yeah,
fun.
they are.
It's great.
Reset the stream.
Oh, so you've lost the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, have you? Oh, really? Sorry, I'll go down.
The chat's still up. I had to reset my stream, so I've lost.
Yeah, you've lost
everything.
it all, yeah.
So now we need to get to what actually.
All right. Well, what we do?
Alright,
We get to the
One
tunnel.
question: do we have the tunnels still?
Yeah. What do you mean?
The
Like-
tunnel.
The tunnel.
The set that you made.
Yes.
We'll find
And I
it.
do
It's
remember
on
you
the table in there
tortured
somewhere.
Amber that session too. She wanted to take the stairs.
Yes. That's right.
Oh, yes.
He made me like wait an hour of the game to get to the top of the stairs.
Hey, Fortran.
Oh, hello!
Yeah. So Imperius was like, "Screw this. Elevator doesn't look safe. I've got wings." They're like, "Yeah, let's take the elevator."
So the Dragon Ball.
Amber's like, "Hell no, I'm walking."
Pass it here. Stop it! Stop it! We haven't got to that part yet.
It slightly looks like Slave 1.
It does.
But on the way up the elevator, because it was either walk for God knows how long or take the elevator, I took the elevator. Dragon Balls normally come from mountains and having very stable ground underneath them. Yolan did not like being on the elevator.
That's
so
right.
basically clawed himself to the bottom of to the floor of the elevator
Like
and had a whole bunch of people on the elevator laugh at him. To which he growled at them and had my first successful intimidation roll of the entire game.
So basically, you'll be able to make us on the 18.
Yes.
Oh, you're
Basically.
not a Black Dragon Ball, no? No. Okay.
No.
So they go down into
Gold chains.
the tunnel system.
Next character idea.
They go
That's
down.
the Power Rangers.
No, it's at the Ignatius thing too.
Anyway.
They go down into the tunnel system, and they explore it a little bit, and they realise that the tunnel system's quite a bit more vertical than anything else, and they're travelling down, and then jumping from place to place to place. And they get to a certain point where they have a cross tunnel. And they meet an ant. One of the ants that are actually in this colony.
A giant ant.
A giant ant.
Which looked a little bit
However-
like a rat.
Oh, however, they weren't being particularly aggressive at this stage. And so, through the help of Rayleigh, probably misinterpretation of communication, I think, you all
I had the
basically...
intelligence to know what he was doing, not the wisdom to know not to do it.
Ah.
Loudly.
So you decided with, I think, your dagger or something like
No,
that?
he had his dagger and he was smashing his dagger on the wall, but it was sandstone, so it just crumbled. And I'm looking and
I
going,
was making like a slight tap.
I
to see
get
if
what
the
he's trying to do. He's
movement's
trying to make
sensitive.
noise. So what my character does is he grabs his shield that's glowing because
Light spell.
Imperius had cast light on it, and he saw it and went, bang! And then we got attacked by ants.
Which ended that particular session. Then we jumped to the next session where the combat
Did I-
started. So
did I-
during that, hang on, let me finish. During that whole week, with the toilet rolls sitting in my toilet, other random bits of cardboard, I created the scene that they were fighting in.
Yes.
Minus the rope.
Minus the rope.
No,
yes.
that was made on stream, and I was sitting
Yeah,
there
so it's like
twirling
he-
pieces of paper, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing?" I just like ripped up a piece of paper in like this kind of shape, and then twirled it so it
And
was.
we had
yeah.
the best entry into the combat
No,
scene.
no, no, no.
Yes.
Amber had the best entry into the combat thing.
Yeah, the fucking paladin, gnome paladin, who's only a foot
I
shorter
didn't
than
do
me.
that very well, actually. I'll hold that a bit
I'm an
higher.
upling, not a gnome.
Or whatever the
No,
fuck,
it's
short
disgusting
piece of
creature.
shit thing, fucking pushed me off the bloody edge.
But did you,
actually,
did you go into battle riding the druid?
I've got serious. I do have a serious question about that. Why isn't Amber annoyed at him? Is she just
She got-
too nice-natured, or?
Amber is incredibly nice-natured unless you set off her overactive emotions.
Right, so you can. He shoved you off the edge, but it was more like a prank among friends that could have been.
She
painful.
also forgot because she was battling things, she had rage to express at other things, and then she got excited by shiny.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, which we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But if someone reminds her,
And
she
then
might punch
freaked
you
out
for
by
it
that
later.
other thing.
Note to self, remind him.
Now, this is a very good example because I think you guys are level 5 at this stage.
Yes.
You still are.
And which is very, knowing about D&D and being a dungeon master and stuff like that, they fought the Hydra when they were level 3.
Yep.
And it was CR 6 or something like that, or even higher, I think. And I had to cheat with a little bit of healing to sort of make it an actual decent fight. And they still ripped it apart with just a few minor downs. In this particular combat, the giant ants were CR2s at the best. However, there was 8 of them or 10 of them or something like that.
And they were, also, the
Yeah.
party was split between multiple levels.
Yes. And the party was split between multiple levels, which having the visual representation of the combat was fantastic. And it goes to show you because in that fight, a fair few of the party members went down, and it was actually quite a struggle. And as a dungeon master, it was very much understanding that a fight is better when you can separate the party a little bit, maybe, or create the environment to be a bit more dynamic, a bit more than just a open thingo and just some fights.
Because I think once the party's together as a whole, you compensate for each other's weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly right.
Because
The other thing
the
as
mages
well-
can stick to the back lines, the thieves can dart in and out, but the moment you put a thief on their own, suddenly they lose the sneak attack every turn. They lose. The mages are in close combat.
Yeah, as soon as I get into close combat, I'm the last cancel, I go down. The other thing as well, if you've got one big target, it means that you've got several people just wailing on
on
this
it,
thing,
yeah.
and this thing going, I hit one.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
not
they
very
waylay,
dynamic.
and then I hit one.
And-
Sure, it does a lot of damage and it probably knocks that one out, but you've got a whole round of turns to do something in retaliation.
Once we'd made it through that fight, I think it's safe to say that a lot of the party were quite scared going forwards.
Yes.
Because we're like, oh god, these ants are tough.
Yeah.
You then explored. You explored a little bit down one of the 2 tunnels going off.
You changed into a wolf again, I think.
Yes, you did.
yes,
You did. You
Because
changed
following
into
the
wolf.
pheromone trail.
Yeah, because that's.
But you guys decided, after you turned into wolf and followed the trails, you decided to go down to the other particular part of the tunnel anyway, just to have a bit of a look. And not too far in, you started noticing that there was veins of gold in the area. And so you went down a bit further and followed the gold veins, and you went for a fair distance. You didn't realise that you weren't finding anything central or whatnot, but you did realise that the gold vein just kept on going through, so it felt like the gold vein was quite large in this area.
And it was going away from the smells.
Yes, it was going away from the smells. Yes.
And someone hoisted Amber up so she could inspect it.
Yes.
I remember that.
It's not a paladin, it's a paddling.
That's battling.
That's paddling. Anyway. So you guys
The jokes that Waghorn rejects.
Yeah. Fuck you on the GM. So they decided to travel back and go down to where the pheromones had
We're getting
led them.
sheepdogs, weren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I had to dance to the party to communicate that that's what the ants were doing to us.
Yeah,
So-
you interpretive danced and only Amber understood. It was great.
So after a while, when they were travelling down the other tunnel, they would see branches going off in different directions. And down those particular branches, they noticed that there were more ants, but they weren't being aggressive. And they quickly noticed that they were being sheepdogged or herded into a particular direction. And it followed the scent that the wolf was picking up anyway. So they decided to continue on anyway, even though they were looking like they were getting themselves into a worse situation. But it seemed like the hive was not being aggressive. So they decided to check it out. And then they came up to the main chamber where the queen was, to find this weird monstrosity of a queen that was the typical queen that you would get with a big belly thing happening on, and part of the ant's head was mutated and looked like kind of a human brain stuck on the side of it. And then very immediately, as soon as they see that, they heard her voice inside their heads and started talking with them.
And thus began the best diplomatic session of our lives.
Yep, the best diplomatic session of your lives. Where they managed to convince the ants to create a sub-tunnel out the side so they wouldn't go through the colony itself, and mine the gold.
Yeah. The ants would mine.
You know the best thing about it? Much like the Europeans discovering the Americas, we got the indigenous tribe hooked on alcohol.
That's right. That's right.
So someone made an offering of, was it you with your good
Yes.
berries? To
I
the
gave
queen
good
as like
berries.
a thing of peace, and Amber was, or thank you, or something.
And it was like,
for-
oh, I've never tried that before. It's a new experience.
Yeah. And so Amber's like, oh, I guess I'll follow suit. And the only thing she has of value to her is her alcohol. So she's like, here's some alcohol.
Yes.
And the queen's like, oh, what is this? Oh, tipsy feeling. Oh, this is fabulous.
These ants never tasted alcohol, and all of a sudden, the buzz of alcohol. And that was pretty much the deal sealer.
Not to
after that
mention
one.
because it, it's a hive mind. When the queen gets drunk, the hive.
Yeah, the
gets
ants
drunk.
were all a little bit tipsy up. Yeah, it was.
That was so good.
It was hilarious.
That was great.
So,
And then
yeah.
that's where I found my second magic item.
Yeah.
I was gifted a wand, which we later found out was the magic missile wand.
Kind of
Something
When
nice.
we came back up, I think it was okay. They're going to leave. They're going to leave you alone. They're going to make you a tunnel. They're going to give you free gold. All you have to do is give them alcohol.
And food.
And food.
And food.
Drop a cow
And
into the
don't
game.
bother them.
And I'm pretty sure someone made the comment about blankets. Might have been Mick.
I resemble that remark.
Blankets? What?
Pox-filled blankets.
Oh.
I shall speak slowly and quietly, or slowly and loudly until you understand. Your beads and blankets in exchange for your land. You remember that? Also, we made the deal with that woman to get like a 10% cut or a 15% cut of all the gold.
It's like 30%.
Was it?
Yeah. It's like she kept 70, we got 30%. Or something.
Yeah, she was doing most of the work for
And
you.
that's
so.
where Imperius got laid.
Yes.
He rolled a crit 20 on his performance as well.
So, we've played through you getting laid possibly for the first time.
For Imperius, probably.
And also your high school bullying. We've really gone into some
Yeah.
deep sort of...
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get there.
All right. So you guys then finish that particular session, move on, and then jump onto the ship.
Yes.
I do remember I intimidated.
We crashed into an island and then we moved on.
I spent.
I think a little bit more than that.
Before we got back on the boat, though, I
Fine.
spent about an hour walking through town, casting message in random directions, trying to find the other party.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Before we went through the tunnels, I just
And
really
Amber
planned
and-
on burning socks.
That's right.
And you met the.
Oh yeah, we tried
Oh,
vodka
our
for the
American
first
friend.
time.
Oh, that's right, vodka. That's right. Because
Yeah,
the
the potato
Russians
wine,
were in the
whatever it
tavern.
And
No,
also,
the
he
Americans
recruited the Americans.
That's right, recruited the Americans. I don't know what
I
you
don't
talking about.
It's the only thing so far that has made Amber drunk.
Was the vodka?
Yeah, the
Yes.
potato juice.
Vodka.
I'm pretty
Vodka.
sure, unless you haven't got drunk yet, have you? And you don't drink.
I don't drink.
Like, us three are the only people that haven't gotten drunk yet.
I mean, my
And I drink more than most people.
It's going to
and
be
I
a
still
slippery
haven't
slope
gotten
when
drunk.
Imperius gets drunk.
character doesn't get drunk. She just never stops drinking.
Because you're a dwarf.
Oh, actually, yeah, you're right. It was drunk.
Dwarf.
Yes.
That's because you got too much blood in your alcohol
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, we don't want you to
Oh, I
like
think
hiccuping
what's really
fireballs.
Yeah, I do.
I think what's really important here for the purpose of Amber too is that earlier in the piece, this is a few episodes ago, I gave her an endless.
It is a very small little barrel, like a carry barrel, full
You're a
of
traveller.
full of endless ale.
Not good ale.
Not good ale.
Just
dwarven ale.
Dwarven ale.
It's
Dwarven rot gut.
basic dwarven ale. She just sits and drinks it like water, because to her it's like water. But she does
do we
brew
just call
her own ale as well, which is
Put
much better.
aside just dwarf juice TM.
So
I mean,
this,
like,
does this mean that
sure.
actual water is poison to you?
What?
If you drink alcohol all the time, which is a toxin, does
I
it mean
would
that
like-
actual
Yeah,
water is
you would
poison?
have such
I
an
mean, like-
incredible addiction that withdrawal would probably kill you.
Guess
I'm
we'll
just saying
find
that-
out.
Yeah, she's got blood in her alcohol system.
If she can drink the toxin, fine. That means the non-toxin, like
Well,
water.
yeah.
Potentially.
Alcohol addiction is one of the few diseases
that,
that in real life that if you don't keep drinking alcohol, the withdrawal will kill you. So
Right. Don't get distracted. Don't get distracted.
We can get
'Cause we're
that.
going on
We can
to the-
cross that bridge.
Don't
when
get
we
distracted.
Because
So-
this is
so
totally
yeah, we-
real
we-
life.
I'm fucking railing back off the derail.
I know.
So we crashed into an island.
So
And then
they
we moved on.
sail for a bit more
Into the boob island.
into the blue line.
The
Into
bosom
the-
land.
So
Did we
they-
crash
and this
into
was
the-
interesting because if you watch that particular episode, they're just yapping on about bullshit. I have no fucking idea.
Did we
what they're
crash into
yapping
the
on.
right tit or the left tit?
The right tip.
yes.
Depends on which way you're
I was
facing.
gonna say,
Like,
which way is she lying?
But then again, with the ship, we left tit behind.
Die.
this is what I have to put up with every Sunday night.
We get off the ship. We get off the ship.
I swim to the island as a dolphin.
There was another island
Yeah, there was two islands.
Yeah, you'd already done the dolphin thing, so you managed to find dolphins and a porpoise and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we're
a
on
whole
a
bunch
ship.
of cool
You found
animals.
his porpoise.
We found his porpoise.
I've already made that joke.
You already
I
made
didn't make
it.
it again.
Yes, but some of the people
So
in the stream
as
have not
they-
heard it yet.
As the people are just basically just yapping on about whatever they're yapping on about, the captain basically says, hard starboard. Ship lurches massively to the right and unfortunately catches an iceberg. It was basically like the top of a mountain, undersea mountain, that actually managed to sort of peak
the sea.
under the sea, had peaked itself above the water. In doing so, the ship had copped a lot of damage along its side, but luckily because it also beached itself up on top of the mountain, it wasn't taking in water. So they had probably, give or take, 8 to 10 hours before the high tide was going to kick in to actually fix the ship. However, not too far away was another peak of another mountain. And the describing of it was essentially that they could, because of the druid, get water breathing and essentially just walk between the two. And it was kind of like the in
But
joke.
we did not go for that.
And you didn't go for that point for some reason. You decided.
Wait.
There was two.
She knows what's coming.
Oh yes.
Right, everyone.
We're really
Everyone.
describing emoticon for this.
No, right, guys, we do need a emoticon for this. Let's let one person describe this, and I will describe it until it goes in. Right, so there was two methods of travel that people decided to go across to the other island to investigate. One group of people decided to just jump on a rowboat. Rowan decided to summon a whole heap of dolphins that people could ride. First, put your hand up if you decided to jump on a dolphin. All right.
And the American.
And the American. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And the American.
And for the rest of the party, hands up if you're wrong.
The American did not stay on the dolphin for much longer because Mage Hand!
Mage hand backside. Just imagine like America going, yeah, on the end of a dolphin. Yeah.
And the whole party going, oh god, no. And Imperius is going, nah, Mage Hand.
Summon up a lance so I could practice jousting on dolphins.
All the shenanigans that come into basically riding on a dolphin. So I made them all do, of course, animal handling checks. They all did pretty well, except for Amber, who failed.
It's matching your hair.
Amber failed, and the dolphin basically decided to try and get rid of Amber off its back, and then dive into the water to try, and then jump back up again a few times to try and get rid of her. So as the in-joke became, basically to stay on and hold on, was to get her axe and stick it in the blowhole of the dolphin to hold on.
Sound effect, please.
Oh, now it's stereo.
And this is where we found out that Amber can turn into a tomato.
Tomato.
Tomato, not tomato. True silver bounty.
So yeah, so as the dolphin was coming back up and she was still managing to hold on, it was kind of like at the last moment as she's holding on, she had to pull her axe out. So, and then it was like that. And Amber loves animals. Sorry, Alice loves animals. So yes, this is the reaction we have
Every
from
time.
Alice. Every time.
We need a pop emote.
We need a pop emote, yeah. All right.
We can make custom emotes.
We can make custom
Definitely
emotes.
It's such a good spell.
So they go over to the island. They investigate for a little bit.
There's a video on YouTube.
Rowan investigates for a little bit, actually.
There was a plan going in.
You'd scouted it out first by changing into an animal before you rode over.
Yeah, sorry, you scattered it out first. That's right, yes.
And found lots
That's
of
right, I forgot about that because there was crabs on the beach. And everyone's decided, holy shit, let's go kill up a whole heap of crabs so we could have crab for dinner.
No, it was because there were big crabs, which meant they're going to try and eat us. So that's eat them.
But here's the thing.
Sure, that was your motivation.
The party
We wanted crabs for dinner.
knew how Rowan would react to that, and so they had to convince him to play along to get to the island. So they did successfully. They were all like, no, you can just throw food at them. They'll go away. We'll walk past. No harm, no
We
foul.
won't attack them if they don't attack us.
We did say we would only attack the big ones and leave the little ones alone. And you agreed to that.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
'cause that's
explained the whole cycle of life and...
Yes, and that's okay because that's responsible hunting of animals, not killing everything.
Yeah, that didn't happen. 2 fireballs later.
So we moved on from the island.
So
No, we didn't.
what we've really got to explain to is that as soon as they got onto the beach, a combat ensued. I can't remember exactly how it went, but the crabs all came to the party.
They charged us. They were coming right for us.
They're coming right for us. Then the sorcerer of the group, now being level 5 and having access to fireballs, decides to fireball them once. Which not all of them died.
Twice.
No, it
3
was,
times.
It was a thing where we landed, you readied an action
Yeah,
to
if they
fireball.
attacked us, I would fireball.
So basically it was you, everybody else, the crabs. So then the crabs acted, you fireballed. Then it was your turn immediately
Afterwards, yes, it was fireball again, and that killed 90% of the crabs.
In fact, it killed all of the crabs bar one.
Not one.
2. Because I cleaved the other
Yeah.
one
Oh,
in
that's
2.
right. That's right, yes.
Yeah, the two big crabs that survived.
That's pretty much what this whole episode was about.
Basically.
Bibs and nutcrackers.
Yeah.
So,
That whole episode.
so at this
The worst
stage,
part? I
Rowan
didn't
is
get to eat into the crab.
Rowan
Yeah,
is
yeah.
distraught as the party is beginning to rummage around with all these boiled crab corpses, going, "Oh goody,
He's gonna.
time for dinner!" I'm like curled up over the body of this one that's barely alive, and I just drop a tidal wave on most of the party.
Not yet though. It wasn't yet because I walked over to you with a piece of crab and I was munching on it.
Trying to console him while eating a bit of crab.
Rowan, it's okay. And he just turns to me and goes, slap! Slaps the crab out of my hand.
him up even further.
I'm like, do you want it to go to waste? He's like, no. It's like, it's a circle of life. I'm
Alright,
just eating it.
I
It's
think
dead.
this is is a good example of another episode you also have to watch, because that whole fight and that whole scene was absolutely fantastic. One of the best scenes we've
Yeah,
had so far.
we'll skip forward a little bit, I think.
Anyway, long story short,
That should be the title of
We
the
had-
memoirs.
let's do Civil War ensued.
No, long story
Civil
backwards.
War
It's the title.
I
ensued.
feel like we should explain what happened to Rayleigh.
So,
Yes,
okay.
what happened to Rayleigh is very important.
We forgot about the candle before that.
it's from my.
Yeah, that's why you got to really watch the
That's
episode.
the episode, but
It is,
but
for later.
not really. Perspective is that Rayleigh is going increasingly insane at this point. He doesn't trust the party at all. So he basically, most of the crabs are dead. He's really pissed off. He kills the final crab. Amber's been trying to
After
protect.
we'd taken damage from the druid.
After we've taken damage from the druid, and the Dragonborn had fought the druid and all this stuff.
Amber was
And
trying to say.
Amber goes nuts and just starts punching Rayleigh's face in.
To explain, to explain that, Amber had been trying to console her best friend at this point
Yeah.
by saving the one crab that was left and getting it to the water. Something had snapped where Rayleigh's just like, fuck it, I'm ending it.
Yeah, arguments over. The crabs aren't important anymore. Let's move on.
shot
Like,
with your gun.
Now-
yeah, I
And
shot it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was
so
like the single most
it was
important
the
piece
first
of
time I'd
Amber.
ever fired the gun as well.
No, it wasn't. The first time was in the ant tunnel, and you deafened everyone.
That's right. That was.
That was cool.
Yeah, you just said they go, ha! And everyone else is going,
Okay, yeah, I picked up a fascination for the gun in the ant tunnel, and I finished off the crab on this island. So Amber's
Which-
then gone nuts after consoling her
Yeah,
friend
you made
who
it
loves
snap.
animals that I've just killed the last animal, and I've used an acid round for the pistol, so can't even salvage it. It's just shredded crab basically
And
at
Amber
this point.
snaps and just barrel charges him and beats him into the ground. He's so lucky I just rolled real shit.
Yep.
and
All
that's me
shitty
just
rolls.
sitting there just going, whole person, whole person, whole person!
He succeeded on the whole person on Amber.
Eventually, yeah.
But he didn't succeed on the whole person on me.
No.
Every single time I've tried
Yeah,
to hold
even the paladin was trying to hold
So
you.
I've walked through 3 hold persons without getting touched at that point, and just kept walking. At this point, he was doing the old emo stormy walk off, and he was walking. He was walking. He was walking towards the boat. And why did he stop?
I stopped you.
That's right. Dragonborn stopped me, and then I went, all right, fine, sat down, and then the warlock shot me in the neck with an
Well,
arrow.
no, you also said that you were going to retire the character.
Yes, because you at that,
And
at
handed
that
the
stage,
character
you
sheet
basically
over
handed the
to
character
Tim.
sheet
It
over to
wa-
me.
Yeah,
Yes,
he
that-
finally reached the point of
He-
insanity.
That was the
Snapped
point.
entirely.
Once Rayleigh, that was actually an intention originally with the characters. Once he reached a level of insanity that was unstable, he would actually leave the party and become an NPC for Tim to play, who would basically, from then on, stalk the party as...
And one of the reasons why I attacked
Yeah.
you is because you had already given up on the character and it would be limiting your...
So
Yeah.
I went, all right, cool, character's gone. I passed it over to Tim. The warlock shot him in the neck with an arrow while he's basically in full depth of insanity, not responding, completely silent. And
Nearly
he's
took
just
him down.
taken it without responding. An arrow straight to the neck, like 18 damage, and just not giving a shit. And then finally, on 2 health, the paladin rolls a perfect nat 20.
No. You got to really do it properly.
Oh shit! I gotta go.
Yeah, I figured you would have to go. That's
Sorry
good, man.
guys.
So good.
Have a good one.
I did later.
Oh, good.
Basically, the
Done your combat.
paladin did lay hands on just to sort of keep you alive. But what the paladin did was to basically asked on his god to intervene. You didn't actually use any of your rules or anything like that. You
I just said,
intervene.
oh Lord.
So I do what I always do and roll a d20 in the background, of which I rolled the 20. Thus, healed Rayleigh and took away took some of his insanity away, enough that he could actually function again, of which I handed back in character. Now he's gone down a particular path which will probably reveal itself when we go into Aris a bit more. However, realistically, that's another one of those episodes where you really have to watch it all because it was.
It is a pivotal
It
moment.
was a pivotal
It was
moment.
brutal and there was lots of fighting.
It was not
glorious.
how any of us expected the episode to go. We did
Neither
not
did I, because I'd
accomplish-
written up this like 2
wanted
or
to
3
loot the
session dungeon.
It basically ended with Rayleigh tossing aside his weapons and deciding that he
He's
was
done.
moving on from that life.
Mm.
So now Imperius has them all.
and I believe Rowan attempted a trance on the island, not caring about the tides because he had like 23 hours of water breathing left, so he could just like trance on the island even if the tide came in and swallowed him up.
I was so great Warren, I took an arrow to the neck.
Oh, he's not here to hear it.
We'll tell him next week.
Amber convinced Rowan that we should head back to the ship, and we all ended up back to the ship. A little
Imperius
bit
wanted to explore the
worse for wear and a bit less friendly with each other.
There were some icy moments.
We needed therapy.
Yeah.
And booze.
And booze.
Yeah, Rowan and
that
Amber
work out
went
for
back
you?
and got drunk.
Yeah, wasn't that when you tried out your...
Oh yeah, that's when we tried the berry brew.
Now, by this stage, the very good.
Wasn't it? No.
Good night, son.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for coming along, mate.
Crazy.
I know, those Americans love hearing us Australians, mate.
Hey, we love having them. They're good fun. Good company.
Alright, anyway, let's move on
Yes,
because
yes,
we're
yes,
getting
yes,
a bit later than we wanted to be. So
But
at this particular stage, they've all dropped back onto the ship, and
Well,
the
we
ship
started
is
late too.
yeah, that's true. We did start late. The ship starts moving on after it's been repaired. Actually, no, they stayed on the ship for a while it was being repaired, and a few other things to try and sort of get themselves
Underground Fight Club.
Yeah, I was gonna say fight night.
a fight
Yeah.
night. I think that happened after the ship started sailing, though.
Yeah.
lots
Yeah.
of dialogue.
That was after me and Amir had words and in
Oh yeah, I see.
I
that
almost-
if your parents were more decisive, they wouldn't have been killed by demons.
yeah. No, you just said they wouldn't have been killed because you didn't know how they
That's right,
died.
because you guys
Yeah.
had it. Yeah, you guys had it.
And I almost threw him off the ship,
Yeah.
but instead I walked away.
But you're missing all the little things like Amber punching a nail.
That's why you have to watch the stream for all the little bits and
True.
pieces.
You.
Fifth
Rules
edition.
for what? 5th edition. Yes.
And then, yeah, Rayleigh going to the Fight Club and actually managing to take down, like, the Hulk. And then I finally get past the...
Honestly-
I finally manage to take my armor off and I'm like, who wants a fight?
That's
and everyone's
actually
like...
a good fight to watch.
Which one is that one?
The fight with Rayleigh is actually a good fight to
Oh,
watch
the-
because it's quite an interesting one of how it
descriptive
goes
watch,
about
yeah.
Rayleigh taking his new path a bit more.
The Fight Club rules were actually a little bit of abstracting sort of combat. So we're still rolling 20s, we're still rolling and adding your bonuses and whatever it was. And sometimes, depending on what
You're a bit fast and loose with the rules.
I was a bit fast and loose. Sometimes if you describe to me what you were doing in your combat, like you actually said, I'm going to try and do a sweep kick or something like that, I generally go like, okay, you can do that but with disadvantage, and if they succeeded in managing to do it, then I would give them a bonus or a boon or something like that, either on the following round or within that combat, to make it a bit more descriptive and a bit more dynamic. And we just played with it and just try to make it as interesting as we could. So it's a very,
Poor
very
Rayleigh kept rolling 3.
yeah,
Non-stop
kept on rolling
rolling
threes, unfortunately. Yes.
I think after that, I bought him some new dice to fix it.
Yeah. The
And then you
problem.
roll 3.
We actually do have them on the YouTube channel at the moment. These last ones.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's very good, especially for GM. It's actually you probably really enjoy that one. Again, the audio has been a problem, but just turn it
Yeah.
up really loud and you can hear it.
We'll try and fix stuff on the re-edited versions once we get to do
So
it.
anyway, yes, we had the Fight Club thing, which was a little bit of a me knowing that he was what he's going into is his new, not new character, as what he's evolving into, new direction. So then that was part of that. Then more conversations, I think, happened. You guys were dodging that conversation like no tomorrow in that stream. It was hilarious.
No one wanted to.
No one wanted to. Like. And then we moved on, and then
We tried the brew.
I was gonna say you never
we
came
tried
up
the
with
brew.
You
The
tried
brew.
the brew.
Go, just watch that episode. Watch the brew episode.
Yeah, I got drunk.
Let's just put it lightly.
You
We
got white
tried
girl drunk.
brew, then we got drunk with a different brew,
Yeah.
To wash the bad taste out of your mouth.
And while we were drinking that new brew, we were making another brew. There was lots of alcohol involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, brew.
Yeah, bro.
And after
You're my new brew buddy.
and after all that drinking,
What have we done?
Rowan didn't feel quite as upset about any of the events
About reality.
that had occurred the day before.
And then, essentially, last week's episode,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, that's what we were up
was
to last week.
the attack
We all
on
had-
the ship.
No, it was
No.
2 weeks ago.
No, 2 weeks ago. Sorry, last
That
week was
was-
Halloween.
Oh, last week was the Halloween episode.
Yeah.
That's right, yes.
We had some odd dreams and
Dreamscape.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago would have been the episode in which they were attacked by a weird entity of a storm, essentially.
Some giant battle cleric thing.
Some giant battle
friends.
cleric
Yeah,
inside a
that
storm.
was actually pretty brutal.
Yes. That was quite devastating.
I don't know, I was in the shitter.
Yes, you were there for that one.
Translation, I couldn't make it to that session. So
I
the
don't-
character was in the
He,
shitter.
he didn't have any of the mushroom stuff.
I don't know because I got knocked off the ship.
By me.
Yes.
Oh,
Which saved my life.
I got knocked into the ship.
So what I did with that particular combat, and again, watch the stream, watch that particular episode once we put it up, and you can see it better. Nice and simple. I put like 3 sorcerers in there, which were level 7 sorcerers. So they had Dimension Door, and they also had barbarians, and it was all storm based. So it was a storm cleric, storm
Barbarian.
sorcerers, and storm
Storm
barbarians.
soul
essentially.
barbarian.
Yeah. All of the little bits and pieces that go with it. So they were basically in the first round. They were Dimension Door in, and Dimension Door allows you to take someone else with you, essentially.
Yeah, it was a pretty epic entrance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so thus they all teleported onto the ship.
Riding a druid.
They all teleported onto a ship. Guys, they all teleported onto a ship with the barbarians in tow. Stayed there for a whole round, so they had this unfortunate time in which they were getting wailed upon. They all managed to survive, but one of them got to 5 hit points. And then they thunder stepped out, which thunder step's one of the spells you get in, I think, the Sea of Sword Coast book, I think. So it's not in the core rule book.
Okay.
Very powerful.
Very, very powerful spell. You basically teleport back out. You also do a big, massive thunder, 3d10 damage, and save a half type thing. So yeah, they teleport in, drop a barbarian in, and then teleport the fuck out, essentially. And then the barbarians would just go nuts because they're just barbarians with lots of hit points, just wrecking things.
Chompy, chomp, chomp.
Chompy, chomp, chomp.
I think. Oh, and one of them cut my beard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which had just been recently
Which
raided.
Rowan had so graciously. They had a very good bonding moment where they had redone the beard and the hair, and then
how
he was
drunk was
fully
Rowan
clad.
at
I
that
think.
time?
Completely sober. He just really enjoyed braiding her hair.
Yeah, they were having just a bonding moment, and it was beautiful. It was a
It's
luscious,
kinda like-
beautiful beard,
like-
or new braids, new flowers.
I think it would have been
sitting-
hilarious if you were both drunk and he did it then and looked like a terrible mess. But because you were drunk, you thought it was awesome.
No, this was done
It's like
completely
when the
sober.
chimpanzees
It was
groom each
therapy.
other.
It was
Now-
therapy.
Now, last week's episode
Chopped my beard.
was...
So I smushed his face in.
Last week's episode, we did a bit of a Halloween thing, but at the same time, I did plan parts of it anyway, and so it sort of just coincided. So I'm not going to worry about too much going to that episode because it's still actually up on Twitch. Just look at the video section; it's still there.
It is worth having a look at though, because it was a very good
It's-
band-aid.
It's not just that it's a band-aid.
As well.
I've purposely, everything that I've put into this, every little thing that's happened, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time, I'm doing it with a purpose. Not just randomly. I hate randomly putting things in just for the sake of just randomly putting things in.
Yeah, right.
Shut up.
Little
I know.
bit of
I
fun.
put random things in for the purposes of timing, but those random things are also, if they decide to follow it up, I already know what the lead is more than anything else. But they're like minor quests more than anything else. It's not like random roll. You're at sea. You encountered random elementals, and then nothing. Why were they there? I hate that.
What I meant by band-aid though was it was a good party band-aid for the previous civil war that
That's
had
true.
happened.
Oh, you mean like when we hit Imperius with a book?
Yeah.
We all
Yeah.
delved into each other's past traumas as
We
infant
ripped the
childhood.
band-aids off their soul.
Look at the chat.
And
Yeah, I know. Romney's known me a long time.
we all got an insight into everyone's persons, and it was a really good fix for the characters. They all got a little bit of an insight, and I'm ignoring that right now.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone else actually saw into Rowan's life though.
He just saw himself.
No, that's because you try to talk to the raven.
Yes. I spoke to the raven.
Last week's
Actually, you don't know,
episode,
I was one of his
Imperious
clients.
Mate's friend was the Raven.
last week's episode, even though it was a Halloween thing, actually had a lot of the
It has a lot
other
of-
little plots
It
that I've
may
got
have put
throwing out.
Imperious
Think of it
down
like
the
one
path.
has no past.
Like a TV show where you have a really
F1
good
has no
character
past.
development episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's not action, but it's really.
Imperious may be going down a new path now because of that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty much.
My
pretty
character's
much.
going to be doing something a little bit different
Mm.
moving
My
forward.
character had already started going down the idea of, oh, gods, they are pretty powerful. They do things. And now she's like, oh, fuck, they really do things.
Now that essentially brings us to the prelude of this particular D&D game. So next week we will be starting Act 1, which is still all part of the whole same thing. It's just a nice little spot that we'll be jumping in.
Where's the musical ed coming?
We've talked
We're
about
not planning it! We're not planning it!
Has actually been in conversation before.
The problem with the musical episode, it is about copyrights. That's the biggest issue
No,
about it.
we just make up songs which are gibberish, but
I was going to say we can do some of the great swordcraft songs, although probably none of them should be appropriate in stream.
And Chris
it
does
has
not want to take part.
mature content warning.
Like Chris does not want to take part in any singing episode.
kind of that's fine. That makes him the star of the musical episode.
Yeah.
Roll initiative.
Alright, so next week we're going to start Act 1, which was where they land in Eris and they land in Leonis, which is the territory inside Eris. So Eris is the large country, and Leonis is the territory that they're landing in. And from there, then we'll see what they do as they try and hunt down evidence of the cult of Xenophet.
It'll be great. Hi, have you met my friend, the Scourge of Eric?
The Scourge of Aaron.
The Scourge of Dariada.
Yes, that's probably not better either.
No.
I'd probably go.
The Scourge of Del Riata is alcoholism.
So, me?
Yes, you're the Scourge of Dariada.
Oh dear.
It kills more people than the bubonic plague.
Thank you all.
So
Thank
does
you
my
everyone who's been sticking with us for this whole chat. It's been a lot of fun.
Been
Thank you
awesome.
very much.
Yeah.
If you have any feedback, we do love to hear it.
Yep.
And we love your interactions with us.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
please.
You broke
love
us a number of times.
Good job.
Yes, we've been very happy and been blessed by the people who've come on board. Thank you very much. Thank you, Romney, for giving us some bits. Love your work. And next week, join us as we go into Act 1 and hunt for the cult of Xenophet and whatever other plots they accidentally trip over.
We'll fall
Yeah,
into
like find out where that bloody cleric came from.
And the Baron's birthday, I assume.
And the Baron's birthday.
Probably.
Well,
I
the
really.
likelihood of it being
we had
Wednesday is
discussed
pretty
of
high.
whether we can get the Baron to actually come and sit in at the table for it.
You know what? All right, I'm going to describe exactly what you're doing. Like, what I've got a plan.
Yeah.
Sorry. What I'm doing is that I'm going to get another camera at some point in time. Probably have to wait until I get paid, unfortunately. But luckily, what I've got planned is not for a few episodes anyway. I'm going to put the camera here, move this over there. So in this space that you
Look
can't
at
actually.
no one actually.
No, it's on purpose. The space that no one can see is I'm basically going to set up a green screen and use that as the backing for any of the people who come in.
We have to have a conversation with ourselves.
Yeah. So we can actually have a bit of fun with them in their character costumes and stuff like that, with a backing and all that type of jazz, and have some fun with it. And get Daniel in and a few other people who want to join in and so on and so forth.
Yep, I've got some other ideas as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just realised.
Sorry,
to me.
I'm gonna start buying costumes for all of the interesting characters. Like when you go back to the captain, I'm gonna just like have a ship happening and then come in as the captain.
I just
I do
found.
have a pirate's hat. It's just not big enough.
It's
to
all about the hats.
It is
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
hats.
hats.
Absolutely, it's just the hats.
I just found you can emote Salty Dragon Tavern.
Oh wow, that's nice, awesome.
Oh yeah.
Salt, dragon, booze.
No, no, no.
Salt dragon booze, yeah.
Yeah, Salty Dragon.
Isn't it?
Nice.
It's a tankard with the Hearthstone symbol on it.
Yeah.
It's literally like a
A
tavern.
tanker with a redacted symbol.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Nah, it's just hats, Romney. We'll just do hats. I think the hats is a good idea.
Yes. I have a wonderful Secundum style hat, as I'm sure you know.
Anyway, good night. Thank you for coming, and hope to see you guys all next week.
We love you all. Thank you.
Au revoir.